And we are live.
Hello.
Howdy. So for today, we're going to talk about a topic. It's probably a little less. It's a little more out of the ballpark for us. This is a little combination of us being, well, me personally being a bit unprepared, and I didn't really want to do gameplay today. I thought about it, but I was like, I'll try something a little out of left field and see if how people like it. And we posted a poll too for those of you who are interested. If you want to, you can. I posted a poll asking what you want to see in our live streams. Gameplay is usually the default if I have nothing to do, but I wanted to try something different today, and I kind of talked to Colin about it, and this was kind of one of his suggestions. And it's something that I expressed wanting to do in my previous live streams. I think this would have been better probably as a video, but we're going to try it like this for now. So without further ado, I guess we'll just kind of get right into it. Colin, do you want to start us off, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I pitched the idea just because it's something that bothers me quite a bit. And that's just like net decking in general is something that can be good, but I just want to make sure that the people that watch us and just people in general who do so kind of understand the concepts and philosophies behind it. It's something that, at least from as we're going into like all these Chinese events, is going to become more and more relevant, right? People are going to see all these random lists and, end up playing them. And I'd like, at least for our viewers, to understand like when it's correct to net deck and when it's not correct, and to how to easily identify something like that,
Yeah, and I think I talked about this a little bit yesterday, and this is something, it's been on my mind. I think, again, this would have been better as a like a long-form YouTube video, but we're going to spitball it a little bit tonight, and maybe in the future I'll have a video similar to this one to talk about it, but kind of how to interpret tournament results. And I think one of the examples I gave the other night was, when you're looking at data, one of the most important things is being able to understand someone's path to victory. So I think we used the Fiora as an example, which we were told didn't actually play any Dravens in Top Cut. We've not been able to 100% confirm that, but let's, for the sake of this discussion, that is true. And then we'll go a step further and say, let's say this Fiora in 9 rounds only played 2 Draven, and those are its two losses, right? So everybody looks at this data. Not everyone, but people will look at this data and go, look, you guys were wrong. Draven is not the best deck, clearly, because Fiora got second place. Okay, well, there's a couple reasons why this could be misleading. The first one is, like we discussed, what if the Fiora just played no Dravens? That just means it got a very good bracket, which happens sometimes, and that doesn't necessarily make the deck bad. It just doesn't really prove that it's better than Draven. So I think that's one of the first things you have to look at. And unfortunately, if there is a way to access this data, we have no way to look at matchup data. Now, I know in the past, like a good example is, I come from Star Wars Unlimited. When a tournament is finished, they unlock all the deck lists. So you can actually go through and see any player's tournament path in that tournament. So you can kind of like tell empirically, did this deck get a lucky matchup of brackets, or is it actually a legitimate deck? So I think that's kind of part one to that, is understanding the path that it actually took for this deck to get there.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but
No, yeah, I mean that's part of it too. But especially as we're getting into actually coming closer to this format, and people are obviously going to be playing lists as a reference point based on what did well in China, just because it looks good on paper that this Draven list ended up winning the most recent list, right? Or the Miracle Draven list that won the Barcelona proxy event. Like, those are going to be the default lists here that people are looking at. I mean, when we obviously, our friend ended up winning with this list that we have up right now. We posted it on Riftdex, and it has like 32,000 views or something like that, something crazy. One of the most viewed decks that they have on the site in general. And so, a vast majority of those people are just going to take a list and copy it card for card, which I think is a fine, but as Sefer commented on our YouTube, that's like more of a starting point is where things are. Every tournament after this, whatever list that you're copying is just like mathematically it's outdated, because now it's no longer a surprise if you're going into a tournament with this exact 48 card deck list. I guess was it 63 including 48 plus 64, either way, copying this deck list exactly, then you're not going to have any sort of shock factor going into a tournament. This one has like one flaw being that it can't actually buff its might in combat. So your opponent, if they know that you're on this exact list, then they know they don't have to play around Blood Rush, they don't have to play around Cleave, and you just mathematically lose percentage points based on stuff like that. And even in the ways that I write my guides now, and the way that I'm going to be doing moving forward, going into our Draven list, and whatever guides that I do from now on, I'm going to do so on like this is where your starting point should be, and then you should kind of adapt it based on what you're expecting to see. I think that was one of the biggest issues I had with my set guide that I ended up writing. And as much as we meme on it, the amount of people who message me and are like, "Oh, what do I do into Yasuo? What do I do into Ari?" Stuff like that. Those memes are part of it, where I'm like, okay, I understand why this is happening, but the reason I built this deck list is because it's for a very specific metagame, and that's what it all comes down to at the end of the day. Is what I always say is a deck is only as good as the other decks that you're playing it into, right? You can have an absolutely terrible dog shit deck, but if it beats every single deck that you're running into and then loses to 90% of the field, but your tournament bracket ends up being the 10% of the field that it does actually beat, then congrats, you win that event because the only thing you played were your good matchups. But that's all to say that like when I'm playing at these cash events or something like that, and I'm gonna expect to only really be playing into Kaisa, Aurora, and Annie, right? Those are really the only decks that this list is made for. When I'm going into one of these tournaments, I do not consider Yasuo. It's not in the any part of my brain, I don't consider Ari because I just don't expect to play into these decks. So, yeah, that's kind of the main point that brought us to wanting to have this topic of conversation. And I think it's something that's kind of important for people to understand is you need to interpret these deck lists in such a way that you understand that, it's only as good as the context surrounding it. Like, for example, if you're going into a tournament, now that this is the most popular deck, or the mid-range Draven list is going to be the most popular deck mathematically, right? Then, well, you're probably going to want to tune your list now that people have seen that Aurelia doesn't perform well. They've seen that Draven performs well. So you can kind of skew your list less towards Aurelia and more towards Draven mirrors in that sort of sense.
And there's ways you can there's a lot of data points you can break down too. It's not simply just who did they play. A great one is there's always the debate going first versus going second. Most people agree, 99% of people agree going first is better. I think going first is better, and I'll argue anybody who says decks want to go second. Maybe there are very specific decks out there that want to go second. I don't know what these decks are, but even like there are decks that don't mind going second, like Aurora, for example, but most decks want to go first. So another part of this data now we break down is like, let's take this Miracle Draven deck, for example. And I know Gianluca personally. He's been a close friend of mine for nearly a decade now. I'll say he's a great player. But let's take and he actually 2-0'd every single player at the event. He never lost a game, so this is not a great example here. But let's say Deagle, he actually 2-1 every opponent in this event, and he actually only won the games where he went first. So he won every die roll in Swiss, and he 2-0'd every opponent, only won every game where he went first. And then top cut is modified play draw, which for those of you that don't know what that means if you're the higher seed in every matchup in top cut gets to choose whether they're going first or second in game one. That's something I think they might be implementing at the next regionals. Don't quote me on that. The SCGs have been implementing it. Atlanta last week had it. So if we went back in this tournament, which I think a lot of the software doesn't track that, I'm told the Chinese one does. Ours doesn't for the most part. There's nowhere to input that as of now. But if we went back and looked and just saw, okay, Deacle actually won the die roll every single match, and then he got modified play draw he was first seed going into top cut, had modified play draw, and got to go first the entire way up. Would his run seem as impressive then? That's another thing you have to ask. And this, again, just an example. Deacle is a great player, very good player. He 2-0'd every opponent, so this is not in question for him. But it is a matter of, okay, this is another thing that skews data. So take this Fiora, for example. Now on top of, let's take this and say, now on top of this deck, never having played a Draven, we also found out that it went first every single time in Swiss. And then in top cut, maybe it wasn't undefeated. It went into top cut at I don't even know what seed this was going into top cut. I won't bother looking, but let's say this went into top cut at 16th seed or whatever. But every single match, he was the higher seed. So it's in top 64, it'd be 16 plays 48 or whatever it is, right? Now let's say in the next match, the lower seed won, and he won that because he got to go first, and he won that because he got to go first, and so on and so forth. That skews this data. That has an impact on this data, and that's something I think that you have to consider when looking at this data. So now we've looked at what matchups did they play? Did they go first, second? And then the third one, and this is the least important in my mind, but there is still some factor, is quality of player versus quality of opponents. And I won't go too hard on anyone here, but if you look at some of the stream matches in any event, you can see sometimes the quality of player varies greatly. And this will apply to every event you ever go to, which is why I don't weigh this super, super highly. But sometimes you can see that, okay, for the first 4 rounds, this guy played just some of the absolute worst players imaginable. This guy started 5-0 because he just played. Granted, he has to play a guy who went 4-0, but what if that 4-0 guy then played 3 bozos, and then he queued into this Fiora guy at 4-0, and then he beat them. So that's another thing. That's the third thing to consider. This is the least important, though, because 1, anybody can play a bozo in a tournament. It's it just happens. 2, this becomes less likely the more wins you have. So at 7-0, you're very unlikely to play a bozo. 3, there's not a great way to empirically track this sort of data because players being good is subjective. Now, if I looked at this guy's tournament run, and we don't have too many established players yet, but let's say this guy played 5 of the best players in the game, and they're all on Draven, and he beat them all. Then I'd be okay, there's something to be said for this deck, because this guy beat 5 of the best players, and they were all on Draven. So this is the third thing to keep track of. This data in most games, though, to date, is very hard to look at if there's no reporting. The first one's the most common, being able to see the matchups, but the go first, second is a lot harder. Usually, the third one you can find if you're using a program like Melee. It'll show you who they played and what that person was playing. But the second one, no one tracks right now. So some of this data it's impossible to interpret because you just don't have the variables there.
Well, depending upon the tournament software, if we had access to these events, we could. Somebody made a comment, new stat, bozo play %, but that is an actual stat that exists.
Yeah, it is.
As a matter of fact, it's usually the number 1 tiebreaker for other games. For us, it's game win percentage, but it's called opponent's match win percentage. In Magic and other card games, it's the your first tiebreaker typically, as they want to reward people who had
bozo
a tournament
harder
tournament bracket. But, yeah. So there are ways to look at this data, but at the end of the day, if you're going to spend all this time like going through with a fine-tooth comb on like all these deck lists, you're better off just like investing that time into actually optimizing the list towards what it is that you specifically want to do as a player. And even amongst like teammates, when we know what the best deck is, or we are set on playing the same deck, we'll often have a couple of cards here or there just from like a personal preference. We'll have a couple cards off here or there. Usually it'll become a thing where like the core concept of a deck will still be the same, but a little tech card here or there can make all the difference and just make us feel a little bit more confident. If I want to hedge for Kaiser, whereas Alex wants to hedge for Aurelia, just because we're on different wavelengths as to which we think will be more popular for Bologna, for example, then our lists are going to look very different on a competitive level, right? So,
right.
What you can do, though, I think is, and especially in games like this, it's much harder in games like Magic, but this game has like a leader-based system where pretty much the deck's core identities, with the exception of Draven right now, stay the same amongst like their core strategies are pretty much the same across like all Fiora decks, across all Kai'Sa decks, across all Victor decks right now. Even if they're 10 cards off, 15 cards off in some situations, they're playing very similarly. They're planning on winning around the same turn, using similar interaction spells, all that sort of stuff. So seeing how well a deck does consistently over the course of multiple events, as we have 3 more China events that are going to be going live before Spirit Forge launches for us in the EU and North America, can be very important. And additionally, I think seeing how strong a deck is more based on overall conversion ratio, as well as like combining that with play percent, right? I think this Draven is like kind of the number one here, where I've never seen a deck with this crazy of a conversion ratio when it already was the most played deck. I mean, it had a 36% play rate, and then 63% of them ended up making top cut. There's a chance that just every good player is on Draven, but there's also just as much of a chance that the 2 Fiora players are some of China's best players, and they just so happen to really like Fiora. So they're getting additional percentages and making Fiora look a lot better. Over here in the States, nobody's really performed with Set except for me. So a lot of people rate Set a lot higher than I think he truly deserves, just because it's my personal pet deck and I play it particularly well. But obviously tournament results would show that like it's not a very good deck at all. It's down there with like Victor and Ari and stuff like that.
So Teddy Tran asked, going first a 5% win rate, right? That's subjective. So here's another big thing. We talked about this kind of last night, and I won't go off too much on a tangent on this. Yeah, famous last words. But yeah, okay, maybe I will. We'll find out. We'll get there when we get there. But this game, I feel like there's a lot of, and this was very common in Star Wars Unlimited too, is that oftentimes a lot of the good players can't agree on win rates across certain decks. Oh, I beat Draven all the time. I don't beat Draven. Ezreal's C tier. Ezreal's not C tier. So, and this, I'll get to your question, Teddy. But part of this is that this stems from a lack of a real great way to gather this win rate data, because it's spread out across all these tournaments, and there's not like a great way to compose it unless you like go in and have like maybe AI do this, or you do this by hand. I'm not smart enough to figure out how to do this, so don't ask me. But you would have to go and file all this data away and have someone compose it. Maybe somebody's already done that and I don't know. But when you look at games like Magic the Gathering, there's not really an argument, because they're pulling data from millions and millions of games online. They're pulling data from millions and millions of games in person. It's hard to argue that your deck beats Nadu when there's a bunch of empirical data that says it does not. And there's not really any ground for you to stand on, no matter how good you are. You can shout to the heavens that your Jund deck beats Nadu, but I promise you it does not. And so where this leads into your question, Teddy, is win rate is 55%. Well, according to what data? According to who? There's nowhere this data is actually tracked. Now, we have our own internal data and spreadsheet. And in our own internal data and spreadsheet, I believe it says going first is a 58% win rate. This will probably vary from testing groups to testing groups, depending on what decks they're testing, how good their testing group is. There's room for variance. It shouldn't vary too much. Like if our win rate is 58% and say like another good team, let's say like Prismat's team with him and like Randy, and their win rate data says that going first is like a 70% win rate, then there's a problem there, and somewhat like it shouldn't be that much of a disparity. But if theirs said 55, ours said 58, that's close enough. The second thing you have to think about too, though, is when you consider win rates, is that 55% is actually a lot, because you're just like, well, I'm only 5% favored. No, you're actually 10% favored. You're not 5% over 50, you're 10% over them, because if you're 55, they're 45. So you have a 10% win rate, which that doesn't seem like a lot, but now if let's say it's 58, now you have, what's that, a 16% win rate? Yeah, I'm bad at math, but 16% win rate. But you win the die roll and you won game one, so now you've got a 16% favored win rate across 2 games, that's quite a lot. I'm not Scott Steiner here, so I'm not going to hit you with the wrestling math, but I'm sure someone can tell you that your odds are pretty favored going first.
Mm-hmm.
So that, I think that's something kind of important when thinking about this go first data, is where's that data coming from? There's not like a lot of great data out there because we don't have an online client to pull this data from. And unfortunately, because our tournament software doesn't have a went first, second input, I don't know how Riot actually would gather this data other than personal anecdotes, like just players complaining on the internet that it's too good. And that's, I think, something I hope they implement in the future, is when you input these results in Cardio, or hopefully soon enough, Top Deck GG, shout out them, that they will have a function that allows you to say what games you went first in, and then at the end of this tournament, Riot can go in and be like, oh wow, across this whole tournament, going first had a 60% win rate. This is probably an issue. Maybe we should like think about this a little more and what we can do to fix it.
Yeah.
Sepher, I never played Magic. I was just using an example. I played like maybe 2 Magic locals in my whole entire life. I just follow TCGs closely, so I know what happened. It was just a recent big problem format that I knew that people could probably relate to, so I used it as my example.
Yeah. And yeah, even compounding on your fact, because we're in a best of 3, if say you were to go first all 3 games and it was 60-40, your odds of winning that match are actually only 28%, because you have to win a 40-60 2 out of 3 times, which compounds again. Like every little percentage point really does matter in terms of the raw math when it comes to all these sorts of things, which so it's important, and why we harp on it so much, that like you never want an outlier like 60-40 play first, go second. Like that's crazy. I will say that number increases substantially the higher skilled the players are, and that's just going to be kind of consistent across all games and all mediums, just because if both players were to play perfectly in an ideal world, you could just like reveal the top 10 cards of your deck or whatever, and you could mathematically determine who will win that match, right? Fortunately for us, card games are not like that. Otherwise, it would just be straight gambling. There is lots of skill that's involved, and that's why things will end up evening out a little bit closer to that 50%, even if we were to do, as Alex said, and do like a bracket across the entire tournament to see how often people 2-0'd versus 2-1'd. It would probably be a lot closer than if we were to only do the top cut, for example, where we have our best players. Those numbers would skew a lot more towards going first being more powerful, in my personal opinion. Alex does have a obsession with using Nadu as a reference point for whatever reason, despite never playing Magic.
Yeah, I did. Look, I just was trying to think of like a recent broken deck. I don't follow Yu-Gi-Oh enough to know what the recent broken deck or Pokemon. I do follow Magic just enough to know that one, even if it's from like a year ago or whatever. So like, I'm throwing out what I can. I'm not going to use Star Wars Unlimited references because who the fuck in the stream is going to understand those? Like, so I try to use
Right.
something that I try to use something more evergreen. I'll try to learn them for all games in the future, so I can just rapid fire all the problem decks off to you or give you better analogies. But yeah, for the time being, that's what I got. Someone asked, Rek'Sai Guide tab. Yes, that is a Rek'Sai Guide tab. Real quick spoiler for you. There you go. That's the. I'm working on that slowly. Hopefully, we'll have that out in a week or two, ideally.
Yes.
But yeah, I think I'm actually a fan of net decking. Like if you're just getting into the TCG space, you'll see a lot of people cry on various forums, whether it's Discord, Reddit, Facebook, etc., etc. Wah, net deckers, wah, do something original. Don't listen to those people. They're just wrong. Like, net decking, especially if you're new to a game, is good. Just like Collin said, you want to be, like, if you have no frame of reference, net decking is good, especially when you're net decking, like, pro players. Those are people who have spent hours and hours and hours testing things. Now, card games is also about your own personal style, kind of like Collin said, so it's okay to change things. Nobody probably has the perfect list. There is no such thing as a perfect list, or at least not that we as humans could determine. I'm sure some AI in 20 years will be able to figure it out, but, like, this is not chess. Like, things are subjective. You can have different opinion. You can be like a great example is me and Collin, when we were both playing Set, always argued about how many turn 1 plays there should be. Collin liked 7, I liked 8. It was all, like, anecdotal, not, like, pretty much anecdotal.
Yeah.
Like, the percentages were, like, negligible to the point where it's like, this will only come up X times in a tournament. But I felt like I was bricking more. He felt like he wasn't. So we had a different number. I think I played 8, he played 7. Like, these things will happen. They're just a good baseline, though. Like, don't feel you have to be original. It's a good thing when you can come up with your own deck and you're like, wow, this is really cool. Nobody has this. It feels really good that this deck works, but you don't have to do that. Don't pull your hair out thinking, oh, if I don't come up with my own deck, I'm a loser or whatever. Like, no. Most of the decks, also with a very limited card pool, we only have 2 sets. There's only so many playable decks that people can actually come up with. Like, there are cool ideas for decks that someone might have never come up with, but a lot of those are not going to be competitive. So don't feel bad if you can't come up with something original, because there's a good chance it's not going to happen a lot of the time. To have something original that's also super good is even harder. So,
for sure.
Have y'all tested Ratborn yet? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, that's what I was going to comment on. It's not something that we've tested, but this is also another thing that's definitely a bit of a side tangent, but it's more as to why Draven is so powerful. But a lot of these decks, like Ornn right now, fundamentally, unfortunately, until something is done, just cannot exist because Thermo Beam exists, and that Ornn deck gets cooked by Thermo Beam every single time. There's just no answer to it because they can combine it with Brynhir Thundersong. So as soon as they get to 11 energy and that Ornn deck is very slow, they just immediately win the game. So because that combination wipes your entire board and there's no coming back for it. So that's why we haven't really gone too much into Ornn right now, because for as long as people are playing Brynhir plus Brynhir Thundersong plus Thermo Beam, this, like, it just can't exist. So yeah. But yeah, as Alex said, like, there's nothing wrong with net decking at a core level, in my opinion. You just need to understand it. It's like going into a fighting game and you see someone playing a character that you like, and you're just like trying to copy everything that they're doing. You're just going to have a worse version of whatever it is that they're doing. You're never just going to be able to do it exactly 1-to-1. But if you take the ideas that they're doing and you start to, like, understand why they're making the moves that they are, you understand why the list is playing the cards that it is, then I think that fundamentally helps you a lot more than to just, like, copy a list, play it, and then not really think about it at all.
And I guess this leads kind of going to segue into the next part of this, what makes for good data. we talked about, okay, like the skill of the opponents they're playing. And the skill of opponents is relatively kind of the same across. Your chance of playing a good player is probably relatively the same across like it scales, right? So like a 30-person event, you probably have like the one guy at your locals who's like an actual decent player, and then at a 500-person event, relatively, you probably have like 10 really good players, or like let's say 15 really good players there. So your odds of playing the really good player are kind of similar. Not always; it's not a one-to-one thing, but this is where kind of the size of the events sort of start to matter, right? Because the larger the event gets, the more rounds you have to play. And the more likely you are to encounter good players over that period of time. And the more variance that your deck has to withstand. Like, it's very easy for a deck, like, this is a little off topic, but like, when you see like a YouTuber who goes, my first place Ari deck. That's just a random example. My first place Ari deck. And then you look and you're like, this won a 30-person event. Well, this guy only had to play 5 rounds. So, like, the chance that he could high roll 5 rounds, win the die roll 5 rounds, play 5 bad players, it gets higher, like, it gets lower. Like, he has to, let me retrain my thoughts. He has to withstand less variance. Because he's only playing 5 rounds. So he could get lucky. It's not unreasonable for him to get lucky 5 rounds in a row. I mean, the same thing works. He could also get unlucky 5 times in a row, but like, just the less rounds there are, the less of a stress test that your deck has to withstand. And I think this is kind of where, this is a thing in all TCGs, but it's especially true in newer TCGs, where everybody's thirsty for first place list. When we looked in the first couple months, we talked about this a lot, where some of the most watched videos were my first place list. And you'd always see someone in the comments say, well, how many players is this event? And when there are 20 or less players, it's crickets. But when, okay, the event has 64 players, okay, that's relevant. When you have 128 players, that becomes relevant. So the more players you get, the harder, the more of a test your deck has to withstand, because there's more rounds. As those rounds get later, there's a higher chance that you start playing these better players, because ideally they're going to be undefeated. Unless the exception is invite, of course, only events. Like if you're at Worlds and there's only 32 players there, okay, well, like those guys are all Worlds competitors. So that's like the exception there, is we don't want to look at invite events that way. But any of these open events, you want to look at that way. So we know, like, when a guy, that's one thing you should always look at when you're watching these first place deck lists. You always want to know, well, how many rounds did this guy play? How many players were at this event? Because when he tells you he won his 10-man local, I mean, good for him. I don't need to put down his accomplishment, but I'm also going to take everything in his deck profile with a grain of salt. He should not be touting his first place result as a reason why his deck is good when there's only 10-person at this tournament. And this scales. I think where you want to look at is like, this website rates relevance starting for 3 stars at 64. That's kind of good. Like 64 is where you start looking at relevance. Where I really start to think is over the, when we get to the 8-9 round mark. So for those of you that don't know, 129 people to 256 people is 8 rounds. 257 to 512 is 9 rounds. In that, like, usually where I start to try to look is the top of those 8 rounds, like around 200 players, to the beginning of those 9 rounds or higher. And Collin, you can tell me if you disagree here, but I think that's usually what we're looking for when we want to look at relevant tournaments.
Yeah, I mean, it really does just come down to, like you said, the play skill at certain events and stuff like that. And again, this is all not to like tear anyone down for their accomplishments of winning locals. I mean, I for one had a crazy locals for Magic that had some of the best players of all time that were at my local shop. Brendan DeCandio is a long-term friend of mine and a famous name in Magic. He was always at my locals. Sheldon Menery, obviously not a player, but he was one of maybe even the most famous Magic person of all time, since he created the Commander format. That was also done in my local shop. So like there are local tournaments where that 20-man locals was more relevant than like most 60-man locals pretty much anywhere else. I can promise you that based on that. But that's all to say that like the data is something that you just have to take, again, like what Alex said, everything is with a grain of salt. It's all just in the context of what it is. And even in those sorts of confined systems, if you were to take my list that won that event and then take it to your locals that has a completely different metagame, completely different best players, what I always recommend is like, okay, who are the people that are consistently top cutting? What are they playing? Those are probably the decks that you should be targeting, even if there's a deck that is slightly more popular. If it's played by less skilled players, then those are people that you can kind of rely on your skill to outplay them. And then once it comes to the best players, those are the people that you really want to be targeting your deck towards, because those you're going to need to not only play well, but also have your deck perform well into those sorts of things. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think too there is something to be said. You put those decks look awful, and there were a lot of misplays on stream. You'll see that in American events too. So I'm not going to blame that all. I'm not going to say that China's better or worse than us. We're better. Okay, I'll say it. But
Yeah.
I will say I do think that even if you have a very competitive locals, it's hard to register locals. Like, even if you're like, well, I played Collin Kaiser, Daniel Zeidenberg, Diwali, and I don't know who's another guy that made top 8. Alan ZQ, all in the same local. Well, that's great, but you still only played 4 rounds, and it's like still kind of hard to stack up when you look at these things.
I mean, on like a complete level, I agree if you're only taking like one tournament result and running with it. But if you're going with every single tournament, you're running into the 4 of us and then being like, oh, well, I beat all 4 of them in one tournament.
Sure,
like,
yeah,
okay,
I smoke these guys every week, yeah.
Yeah, then like that's going to be more relevant than even some of these events in China. As Sefer posted out in our YouTube chat, like this isn't even all of the best China players or the people who are committed. Like over here in North America and EU, the people that wanted a ticket for these events, like the super competitive players like us, got tickets to all these events. You know, I bought scalp tickets. I'm willing to say it, just because it's like I'm a competitive player,
the
and
Riot
I'm
spies in the chat are about to send your ass right to the Shadow Realm. You're gonna show up to
yeah,
that
of
event,
course.
and they're gonna be like, "Sorry, Colin, back of the line, bud."
Yeah. But that wasn't really an option for these Chinese events, you know. They just had to go for these. It was all lotto system based on whether you got into it. So they don't have the absolute best of the best showing up to these things, unfortunately, as well. The other thing I want to talk about with these events is just how luck based these top cut things, situations, especially in top 64, can be, because you have, say that you have somebody who goes 9-0 through Swiss, they don't even drop a single game, and then going into the top cut, they just draw extremely unlucky. They hit like a 5%er and they lose immediately in top 64. That person's list is going to be completely buried just because they got super unlucky. You know, a story from Houston I always like to bring up as a friend. I'll leave him unnamed. Played into another person at top 64 and going for lethal with his Thousand-Tailed Watcher. His opponent has 1 card in hand, 4 energy, and goes Void Seeker onto your Thousand-Tailed Watcher, and immediately off the top flips a Hextech Ray, kills it, and then is able to top deck out of it from there and actually win that game. Like, that's something that's not going to really be reported in the stats, that was like a 1% chance for that to actually happen and for him to lose that game. So now his list is going to be top 64, whereas the other person can continue to go on further into the event, maybe get lucky against other people, so on and so forth. Because it ends up becoming a single limb, he could have only lost 2 games throughout the entire tournament, but they so happen to be the first rounds in Top Cut, so now his list is just buried. So, yeah, more so important than just like going first place. You know, say like that guy goes first, he squeaked in and as the last person in the Top Cut, 2-1 every single match. He was like X2 throughout the event, or his finals opponent XO'd everything, 2-out everyone until the finals, where he just got unlucky. Like, the record of the person who went X2 is actually better, or the record of the person who got second is actually better than the person who got first, but that's not going to be reported in the standings. So, um,
I think too.
yeah.
Something, this is like a niche one, and this doesn't come up a lot, so I don't want people to focus on this too much. But I can tell you a lot of good players I've known over the years that play bad cards in their deck that they're convinced are good,
Mm.
and I can tell you through. And Colin can reiterate. We can all probably even think of some people like this. They're very good players. They top every event, but every time you look at your deck list, you're just like, why is that in there? And even when you ask these people, they give you an explanation, and you're like, no, I'm not buying it. And
Yeah.
then you play with these cards, and you're like, no, I was right. This card sucks. Like, this guy just wants to be like quirky or wants to be unique, and that's fine. Give it to him. Maybe the card works for them, but this is something I cannot tell you how many times I've seen it. If you see a card that looks sus and you think you know what you're talking about, there's a good chance that it may very well be. And that's something to consider too, is that like some players just have their own like very unique play styles or very like unique ways they feel about cards. And again, I cannot tell you how many times I've seen this card in this deck, why is it here? You ask the guy, he tells you, you play with it, and you're just like, dude, this is not it. Like, I've played like 100 games with your deck, and like, I cannot find the scenarios where this card is good. Or the scenario
Yeah.
you are proposing is just not good. And I'm sure we can all think of someone somewhere this has happened, even with maybe like the good guy, the good player at your locals. Like, he's not a pro, but he's the best player at your locals. Like, or someone who just wants to play unique decks that you know is a good player. He always does well, but he's doing well on the merit of his skill more than his actual deck list. And this is something that's really hard to identify. Like, how do you identify something like this without knowing the player personally? You can't really. You kind of just have to test things, which is why testing these net decks is so important, because sometimes you net deck and you find out that God, I'm trying to think of you find out that the one of Teemo in your sideboard is not actually good. It was just a like, you find
Yeah.
out that one Teemo, wait a second, this guy was just trying to be funny. There's no reason to be playing this. So is
Yeah.
Rockfall Path a good example? I
Rockfall
won't
Path
give.
is an example of a different thing that I'll get into. So I see, for a shameless plug, I see someone, nice work on the Draven guide. Thank you very much. For all of you who don't know, I did drop a Draven guide that has had warm reviews so far on our Metafy for anyone looking to play either variation of Draven. Definitely check that out. It's my shameless plug of this stream. But Rockfall Path to me is an example of like, when you're copying a deck list, you're just going to start with like the basics, and then you're going to tweak it here or there. But rarely do people actually tweak the battlefields in this game. That's like one of the things they just kind of stick with. So my conspiracy theory on Rockfall Path is just some dude did Rek'Sai dirty, played an event, did well with Rockfall Path, and everyone else has just kind of copied it since then. We saw it a lot with Vile Lair over here, where everyone was playing Vile Lair just consistently, and there was a good reason. Obviously, it's very good into Annie, but there was just somebody who started that trend, and most of the people that was like asking, "Why are you playing Vile Lair?" and they're like, "Oh, I don't know. That's just what I saw people playing." It's like, okay, you may be correct in that it's good to play this card, but if you can't even explain to me why this card is in your deck, then like, is it really there for a good reason, or is it just like oh, I don't know, I think it's good because someone else played it and did well with it. So, and
Yeah,
yeah, I see
the
someone can't get around the idea of one ofs in this game.
yeah.
Yeah, because of the deck size. I mean, Alex is the number one hater, so I'll let him go off on like a 10-minute rant here in a
No,
second.
no, no,
I'm
no.
trying
I
to
already did my
silence
10
him.
minute one of rant. If you want the one of police speech, you can go watch our live video from yesterday. I explained my reasons why I think one of should exist when they shouldn't exist. I let's save 10 minutes of airtime and not rehash this. But yes, I do. The one of police here does feel that if you are not in one of these valid three reasons, you should not be playing one ofs. Um, but
Yeah,
yes, I don't think I'm very wary of one ofs. One ofs can be cute sometimes too. Like I can tell you a bunch of times I played a one of tech card and I'm just like, yeah, I literally played this deck because I played this card because I thought it was funny. Like I played this because like sometimes I just style on my opponents with the one of and they're sick. But like I understand that like this was probably not the correct choice. Like this is like a very anecdotal bad thing that I probably should not have done. But I did it anyways because fuck it, why not?
Yeah. People are saying Rockfall's good against Draven. I get the concept but even then, like a lot of the players over in China are playing Draven differently than us. Yeah, it's because Draven is built to like certain variations of Draven are built to hold. You want to be able to play your overzealous fans directly to a point. You can't hide a Tide Turner on that specific battlefield. So there's definitely certain variations for it where like if you don't have a battlefield that's doing anything anyways, then I guess you can throw it in there and maybe it's relevant. I don't know. We'll test it more. Something Alex is hating on specifically. But again, it comes down to one of those things where like if you're playing a card like this that you're going to see every single game because it's one of your battlefields, then in my opinion, if you want to play at least a decently high level, you need to be able to explain to me exactly why this card is in your list. Otherwise, you aren't going to be utilizing it properly, right? You're not going to know what it's in there for. You don't know in what situations you should be playing around this card or not playing around this card. It's just in there for vibes, for the same reason that people have these one-ofs in their lists as vibes, you know? If you can explain to me empirically why you think that this one-of is particularly good, then, I mean, sure, go for it. It's not a terrible thing to do to have an occasional one of. I had a one of Daring Poro in my list, but that was because it was like a redundancy thing. It wasn't actually a one of. It was like the seventh copy of a 2-drop, you know. People have one ofs of cards that when they only ever want to see exactly one, and if they don't see it, it's not a big deal. If they do see it, then great. Hopefully it's relevant for the matchup. But typically these one ofs are the cards that you want to have for like very niche scenarios. There's only couple of situations you actually want to see it. And that way, if you just draw it once in the dead situation, then it's not that big of a deal, right?
Yep. And to answer some questions, Zach likes cats. My one of Maxine 2016. Yeah, that card was like, didn't that card win? It was limited to one, and you just won the game. Like one ofs that win you the game are fine. If you can only play one of, like if they're limited to one, and this card is just broken as fuck, yeah, of course you're playing one of it. Like. That's how limit one cards work, right? Like that card wasn't at 3 in 2016.
Yeah.
What else? We do one ofs New You all the time, but Turbo. Yeah, one ofs is very different in that game, and I talked about that a little bit yesterday, where certain decks can play one ofs better than others. Like I was saying, like decks like Fiora and Set should probably not be really playing one ofs like that because they don't draw a ton of cards, whereas decks like maybe Kaisa or Miracles can play one ofs because they're going to see their whole deck. So they're like a toolbox, like kind of almost tutoring through their deck type deck. So that's a lot different. When you have tutors in a deck, it's a lot different, and that's included in my like 3 reasons to play one ofs.
Yeah, and or you know you're playing the Miracle deck that just sees its entire deck. Then like one ofs are only. The percentage of you seeing them is going to be based on the average number of cards you draw a game, right? If your deck draws 20 cards a game versus 10 cards a game, a one of has very different odds of you actually seeing it, you know? So I think the one of stack deck and Aurelia's that we've seen is just like a filler thing that I don't know. I kind of get it. I'm more supportive of it than Alex is just because that deck, I play that deck, so I understand that it's very energy dependent, but it also is a deck that's very dependent on seeing the right cards in the right situation. So, in my opinion, I think it's typically worth the cost of the energy for that card to be at least more than a one of. I think my current list has like 2, but
someone asked if we're doing a wait, I just saw it. God, I'm so bad with names. I have Alzheimer's. Someone asked if we're doing a Rumble guide. That's a funny question. We're probably not. Billionaire Anton was trying to throw together a Rumble guide, but it was pretty hard. Like that deck was taking a beating real bad. Rumble has not been very good in our testing, and well, we will write guides for decks that are not necessarily the best. Like you might even see us write guides about decks that are in C tier. We are still doing competitive content, so we don't want to write a guide and have the guide be like, yeah, lol, this deck sucks. You literally can't ever beat a good player. Like, we don't want you to be writing a guide where like your best win rate is 50% and you're just bad in all the meta decks. Like, that's not something that I want to write. I'm frustrated because I'm writing a Rek'Sai guide, and I think Rek'Sai is very unfavored into the Miracles Draven. I think it's a decent deck. Like, I think it has strategies that can be viable. I feel like I got it to a 50-50 versus Kaiser, which doesn't sound incredible, but this is also consider that I'm playing against very good players too, so maybe when you play lesser players, it's going to be much higher. I was happy because I got it to a good win rate versus Aurelia, where I feel I'm favored. I got it to a palatable win rate versus Draven, but I still feel a little unfavored. But it's got a good matchup into a lot of the field, but even I know, like, I'm not going to not rate a guide because the deck can't beat Draven. Like, that's not, like, a reality right now. Like, you have to rate guides for other things. But I'm also not going to rate a guide for Garen and just tell you, yes, it sucks, man. Like, you're playing for a metal card with this deck and nothing more. Like, you abandon all hope, ye who enter. So, there is...
Yeah.
And Rumble kind of was starting... He's not quite Garen bad. He's still in a good color combo. But in the current meta, he does not quite have the support to thrive in a competitive environment. So, to answer your question, I cannot believe... Good.
Yeah, maybe once they ban a lot of cards that they need to, Rumble can start playing the game again. But until we get to like a whole new meta and we understand what it is they're going to be doing to shift things up and fix the current situation that we have, like, we don't want to commit a bunch of time to writing a Rumble guide and it just turns out like they're not going to do anything. Then it's like, well, great, we're living in a Draven world for the next 3 months, and anything that can't be Draven is unplayable. I hope that they don't do that, but...
Lucid positioned... I think Ari is a deck that is good enough to write a guide about. That's not like that's not like a literal dog piss deck. Like, I don't think it's great, but that's not like I think Rumble is like borderline like dog piss. Like, whereas like Ari is actually reasonable. Actually, we had a guy at the SCG last week, the 10K. He started 6-0, I think, day one, and I think he lost the next two. Or he started 5-0 maybe and lost the next two, and then he made top cut, I think, of the 10K day. He just missed on the 5K. Like, I don't think Ari is an unreasonable deck to rate a guide about. Things like Garen and Lux, those are decks that I think are unreasonable to rate a guide about. And they're not, like, unreasonable in the sense that I would make fun of you if you did it. It's just, like, for me, if I'm trying to make, like, we're trying to feed you guys competitive content, I'm not going to charge you money. I don't feel good about charging you money for a deck that I don't actually believe can even has like a sliver of a chance to like sniff top cut. Like, I can't do that personally. And we have to write these guides too. So like, you have to think about, like, when I'm writing this, how demoralizing it is to have to be like, oh, yep, you're queuing into Aurora, just scoop. Oh, you played Annie, just scoop. You played against Kaisa, you have a 20%er. Like, that's demoralizing for us too. So it's not fun for us to write, and it's not fun for you guys to open the book and just be like, wait, my deck sucks. Like, so it's we don't have unlimited resources too. So in a perfect world where we had 10 monkeys cranking out guides, we would write them all. But we have limited time.
Unfortunately, we just have the one up there. Yeah, that's our current monkey cranking out the Rek'Sai guide right now.
Yeah, it's like you have one monkey. And these decks require time to test too. So you have to think about, we have to take time to test these decks where we're trying to stay competitive. We have to test all these other decks. We have to stay competitive. We have to learn Draven mirrors. We have to do all these other things. But then on top of that, we have to take time out of there to really learn a Lux deck or a Garen deck or a Rumble deck. And that takes a lot of time because we're also not trying to sell you guys poop soup. We're not trying to test with Rumble for 8 hours against 10 different matchups and just be like, well, that's it. I know the Rumble deck. I can write a guide now. Like, I've spent a lot of time playing Rek'Sai, and I still haven't played enough. I'm still sitting there while I'm writing a guide last night. I'm having Cody play Rek'Sai and like over the shouldering him, and like we're talking through lines while I'm reading the Rek'Sai guide to try to learn more about Rek'Sai. So like, Collin must have spent, how many games do you think you played for that Draven guide, Collin? Throw a number out.
Maybe Draven, I don't know, 80, 100 maybe.
Yeah, 80,
Probably at least 100.
Yeah, probably easily, probably 50 hours plus, easily, to write that guide.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, and that doesn't even count the 24,000 words that I fucking typed for that thing.
Let's see.
So, yeah, and I'm. I did see someone. I didn't want to pass them up. Is Ornn bad just because he gets blown out by thermo beam, or does the deck struggle in the other areas? We originally were testing Ornn and I personally thought it would have game into the field as a whole if we were to get to the point where the metagame like just cut thermo beams. But Bryn here Thundersong is also a problem for you because that deck's entirely reliant on like not so fast and whim walls, so they can just Bryn here plus rebuke, and it doesn't matter that they're sending back 4 to 6 power or whatever. They just like double time walk you, wipe your board, and you just kind of lose off that. So I don't think it's just thermo beam. If it was, I would have continued to have my Ornn deck handy and ready just so that we show up and everyone's cutting thermo beams, and it's like, okay, great, I'll show up with it. But Bryn here also cooks it. So without those 2 cards though, I do think Ornn is a very powerful deck. But unfortunately those 2 cards are seeing a lot of play right now. Yeah.
Yes. So well, that is like my main character trait is that I tend to, the way my brain works is I tend to work in loops. I repeat myself frequently. But on stream, I'm told that's good because sometimes we have viewers that are joining us, so they get to hear me repeat myself instead of asking me to repeat myself. So, but yes,
yeah,
I do have a tendency to talk in circles.
Right. He's just very passionate about the
extremely,
things.
Extremely passionate. But to add on to Collin's point, I do think these Protect the King style decks, like Ornn, like Aurelia, often fold to the Thunder Song because they just go Thunder Song. Now you can't play their counters. They get you to 7, and then they go, okay, whoops, fight or flight or rebuke your guy out of the battlefield. They don't need to get rid of it permanently. They just need it out of the battlefield. Or like Rek'Sai can even just Call the Weak. Even if you have the Zonias, okay, you go to the backfield, 2 guys in, I win. You can't play anything. So like I think while these Protect the King style decks are very cool, and I like that they exist, I think they all fold to Thunder Song. And until there's some sort of stifle, they don't work.
Yeah, I got a couple of questions here I want to cover. So what's the issue with Victor then? Victor's specific issue is more on like a fundamental level where it's a very all-in strategy. And it's a very polarizing deck, at least the removal spell Victor. Classic Victor has its own issues. Traditionally, that deck's main thing is that it just struggles to get above like 2 might because it just makes a bunch of tokens. So they can struggle to get into battlefields just with like a single Noxious Hopeful is just like a disaster for that deck because a 4 might unit on a battlefield is going to take your entire turn to clear, and it only costs them 2 energy to do that. So they're going to develop other units, and then it's a tempo deck through and through. So as soon as you fall behind on tempo, there's nothing you can do. The control deck is a fundamental issue where you are presenting a strategy, and when your deck is all in on 39 removal spells plus your chosen champion, all you're doing is you're presenting this and saying, can you beat it? And it's just a yes or no. That deck's going to have, it's very rarely going to be a 50-50 matchup, and if it is, it's going to be because there's a specific card that deck can't play around. So originally that deck was performing very well into Draven because, you just kill all their guys, they don't let them into combat. And then we started testing post-board games where we put like Assembly Rig in there and Hard Bargain, and then as soon as that 100-0 turned into 0-100 really quickly, because as soon as we saw that Hard Bargain, that card just ended up being 2 energy for a time warp because they are so light on the amount of energy that they're able to play and pay for these cards because everything is so power hungry. So that was what the issue is with the Victor deck specifically, is that whenever you have a deck that's that polarizing, is it's just going to be matchup roulette. You know, even when we were testing it at the peak of us thinking that deck was good, that deck was literally 0% into Rek'Sai because Rek'Sai just made more units than it had answers for, right? So, yeah, and then hopefully that answers your question a little bit. Let's see, this might be too vague, broad of a question, but do you think the problem with purple cards is a fundamental game design problem, or is it the problem with the cards themselves? I think it's more on the
Game design.
a little bit of both, I guess.
I think it's game design. I think the
We
way they've designed the purple color wheel, like what its effects are just all effects that ignore combat, and that's clearly been the route for competitive play in this game. Like everybody's trying to avoid combat. It feels like. I'll let you finish your thought, Colin.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was my one little input.
You're good. I think a lot of the issue is kind of the same issue that a lot of the higher level players I've talked to have, which is that they keep printing these cards. Well, it's kind of twofold. Number one, they print cards that are fine in other card games, but are certainly not fine in Riftbound. Problem number one, I think, and most, like, if I could ban one card, it's actually Rebuke. It's not Falling Stars, nothing else. Rebuke is the card that has to go, which can be surprising for some, because this is a card that's not even played as more than like two ofs in some of these lists. It's usually like a two of, maybe you'll see a third out of the board or something like that. But it's like a fundamental design issue where this game is so tempo driven that returning a unit to hand is actually like more powerful than just killing it sometimes, because you have stuff like Ferris Forerunner where that card just, now you don't get the death knell effects. So you're playing a more powerful Vengeance for 2 energy at action speed, whereas Vengeance was already a card at 4 energy and normal speed that saw at least a little bit of sideboard play out of my set list. I'm not going to say it was like crazy playable or whatever, but you're having the cost for a significantly more powerful version of this card and giving it to purple for some reason. Fight or Flight, also another 2 energy spell. Switcheroo, another 2 energy spell. All these cards that are just combined and force you into a funnel. Where it becomes a problem for me on a fundamental design level is that if my opponent is holding up a specific amount of energy, right, in my head I should be thinking about, oh, if it's 1 energy, they can do this. If it's 2 energy, they can do this. If it's 3 energy, they can do this, so on and so forth. But the way that they've designed this game is they have every interaction spell specifically at 2 energy. So it instead becomes at 1 energy, they can do nothing. At 2 energy, they can do everything. At 3 energy, they can do 1 of everything. At 4 energy, they can do 2 of everything now. And I think that's where my specific gripes are with everything. As powerful as like Ride the Wind is as a card, Rebuke is as a card, Fight or Flight is as a card, I wouldn't care so much if they had more of a balance amongst the energy to make the playing around them a lot more interesting. You know, Rebuke should cost twice the energy that it does for a card that powerful. And the fact that they just put them all at 2 energy for some reason is very frustrating to me as a competitive player who wants some variance. You know, people who played Magic will know that, like, if you're going into a blue-white control deck, you'll know what their counter spells are, like 2 or 3 mana. You've got Settle the Wreckage that are at 4 mana that you'll have to play around that, so on and so forth. Just depending upon what they have makes your turn so much more interesting because there's different things, as opposed to the purple problem we have right now where it's just 2 energy for everything. They got 2 energy, you know exactly what it is that you got to play around, which is literally every spell in their deck. So that part's very frustrating. What's the current state of Combo Lucian? Did any do well in China? I think there was one that top 64'd, I want to say. That deck is fine. It can cheese wins into a lot of decks. Pretty good when you draw your combo. Pretty bad when you don't. I think that's really about it for the Lucian deck. Having a blank Chosen Champ is really, or not Chosen Champ, Legend is really tough.
Sorry, I'm getting someone asked for our Discord, and I just want to. It's that probably didn't come out the best it could have, but it is. Our Discord is through our Metafy BP. It's linked right there, so it's in our subscription tiers. So you can find that all there. It's also in the YouTube. Sorry, I'm multitasking here, but
Gold being abundant now, I absolutely agree with Rebuke being banned. Yeah, I mean, I personally think that card,
Gold.
again, it's a fundamental. Gold, like,
Gold is a bad
exasperated the
set
problem.
two. Gold was
But,
a bad set 2 mechanic in my opinion. I think this could have been a cool mechanic,
yeah,
but I think they introduced it too early. Just like
for sure.
having all these high, like, this is the same thing with printing cost cards in my opinion, because like I've said it a couple times. You have a mana system, you print 0 cost cards that invalidate your mana system. You have a power system, you invent cards that allow you to bypass the power system. I think they're very out of hand in the forms of some card. Treasure Hunter is like probably the one that comes to mind the most with when it comes to making gold. Just like you've made too many cards now to bypass. Like you've effectively printed another way to bypass your mana system, and it's like extra crazy with Cold Shot, which is now free and the cost is power. But then you have gold, so now it's like extra free. It's like truly free. So I think gold was just a mechanic that they introduced a little too early. I think it could have been cool, but I think they put it on some cards that are already like pretty good. Like the Victor deck is a great example right here actually of like some cards that are like probably not like broken or anything, but like, you know, maybe a little overtuned, like Wages of Pain. Like this is a relatively fair card. You've added a gold onto it. Okay, fine. Like where's the other one? He doesn't have the 2 cost one, but the 2 cost one that makes it like
Blood
I think
money.
blood money. I think there could have been a better way to do gold. Like these are probably the closest to fair, and even these are a little too good in my opinion. Treasure Hunter was just not okay. I think that one was just like crazy unacceptable. Like even like Sivir's effect, which I don't think is all that great, is fine. Like something like Sivir to make gold, like you have to spend power. Fine, that's like acceptable, but like, man, I don't think gold was a set 2 mechanic personally.
Sivir, if her issue is more in like her color combination. She has purple, but that also means that her deck is like 35 purple cards and then like 5 orange cards. Most colors can produce gold at okay rates, but there's some that just like for some reason orange only has like the Fey Dragon out of set. I think is like its only way to really produce gold, whereas these other colors, like mine for some reason has tons of gold producing in Wages of Pain and the gambling guy, Card Shark, Card Sharp actually, but
Card Sharp, yes, I hate that.
Purple has a turn 1 play that's like the best turn 1 play you can do is just like turn 1 Treasure Hunter. Now all my Rebukes aren't even going to cost me power anymore. Congrats, you lost the game on turn 1. Like we're just playing Yu-Gi-Oh now because you print these cards that are just so inherently powerful. Can Victor beat Draven? Sort of. Not really, at least based on the results we saw. Victor was actually the worst converting deck in all of this China event, and there were 28 of them that played, and I think none of them made top cut. One of them made top cut. Either way, it was a terrible conversion ratio, so...
Yeah, I think it's...
I don't think...
I can pull it up here. It's what is it? Decks, and then how do we find this? There's a way to do it, right?
I just have screenshots, but probably.
Oh, here we go. Okay, we got one at top 512. Let's see. Another top 512. There's got to be one that did. We had one that made top cut, right? I'm almost positive. I know Rek'Sai didn't, but I swear to God, one of these made top cut. Top 512, top 512.
Yeah, I'll pull it up. Yeah. I think it might have made top 64 and then immediately lost. Yeah, exactly. One out of like 30 made top cut and then it immediately lost in top 64. So did not have a good conversion ratio. And the reason for that is, again, going to tournament results, that deck was performing exceedingly well in the best of 1 format of the challenges that were going on. And these were like 130 man events. So they weren't anything to sneeze at, but Victor was like dominating these events. And then we got to a real event that had best of 3 where you can sideboard against it. And that Victor deck, notoriously, as I previously mentioned, it's a very polarizing strategy. You're just playing a bunch of removal spells. Like your sideboard's not going to change very much, whereas everyone else gets to be like, oh, okay, I ran into the 5%, 10% of victors that are on this very polarizing strategy. this is what sideboards are for. Let me board in a couple of cards that just completely hose this deck. I'll board in my hard bargains. I'll board in more Brynhir Thunder Songs. I'll board in my assembly rigs, and then you look at that. Now this best of one deck is not able to win either game 2 or 3 because I actually have cards that are good against it.
Yeah, I think it feels like gold is free from MTG resource math, where you can miss land drops and where the function of mana is entirely different than energy power here. I think it's a mechanic in Flesh and Blood too, right? Like, Colin, maybe you know this, but I think gold is something that exists in Flesh and Blood, and it might do something similar. I don't remember. I didn't stick around that long, but I know someone had mentioned it before. But I do think, like, it's weird.
It's a very fundamentally different game, so it's
it's like hard. It's like kind of apples and oranges here. It's just not the easiest thing to compare. I just don't know why they felt they needed this. Like that's what, like, when you're designing something, you have to think from a design perspective. What does this bring to your game? Does it make it more fun? Does it fix a fundamental flaw of your game? Is it like a very specific strategy? Like, is this like, because every color has this, but like, what did this do for the game? And I'm not saying there's not. I would like to hear the designer's reasoning. I'm sure they have one, of course. Other than like, oh, we just thought gold was cool, like, so we just threw it in our game. I would hope that's not their reason, but like, I feel like it has to serve a fundamental design purpose. And it didn't really fix a flaw with the game. In fact, I thought the power system was kind of like a good way to balance powerful spells without making them cost more. Keeping them like kind of playable, but now we've kind of like bypassed that. It's not really a fun mechanic either. It's kind of like broken. So like, what was the function of it is kind of what I'm like wondering. Like, I like the like cool little combos you can do with it, with things like Jace where you crack the gold, or like things like Pickpocket where you steal their gold. Like, the flavor in Pickpocket's very good. You kill a gold, you steal it. Ooh, okay. I like, you make a gold, like you're stealing their gold. Like, stuff like that's cool, but like, that's not what it's getting used for most of the time. Most of the time it's just being used so I can cast my Rebuke 3 times without ever paying a power for it. So like, that's where
I think it's more to the issue of the power disparity of cards in general. I think is more where it is, where like it feels like it was a cool thing. Like Fiora 2 is a perfect example of this, where like they had these equipment and they're like, oh, you can make all this gold to pay for your equipment and do all this cool stuff where you're moving your equipment around, you're spending the gold. It's very thematic to League of Legends. People love that. And then you put it into competitive players' hands there, and they're like, oh, okay, so this just casts my Rebuke for free, right?
We're not.
You printed Fizz in the same set. Like, oh, this rebukes my opponent's paying 4 energy and a power to equip their BF sword onto a 5 energy thing. So they just committed 2 turns and 9 energy to this thing that I can destroy for 2 energy and not even any power anymore. It sounds like a good deal to me. I will just win the game on the spot. Thank you very much, Riot Games.
It also feels like they made a lot of legends in the set that do similar things. I talked about this very early on, that Jax, Fiora, and not quite Azir, but to an extent Azir, do very similar things where they're all just trying to find different ways to bypass the power cost on your weapons. Like, they're all like weapon decks that bypass the power costs on the weapons. They just do it in different ways. Fiora ramps the land when you equip the weapon, so you're just getting your power back. Jax just lets you pay 1 energy, right? That's what Jax does. I'm not crazy here.
Lets you equip for an energy instead of a power.
Yes, right. Jax lets you pay an energy. Azir creates guys with Weapon Masters so they don't have to pay the power. It feels like there's like a level of like redundancy almost, especially with Jax Fiora. Jax Fiora, I've really felt that because they both share a color and they both do something very similar. Like, they just have different chosen signature spells and one different color in them, but they felt too similar to me. And Azir, to a smaller extent, like, at least that deck's like a token spam deck, so it's a little bit different. But it feels like they tried to do all these cool things with weapons, and gold, like you said, was supposed to be to pay for weapons. Like, that was the flavor. But like many flavorful things in games, the good players, like you said, just went, nah, I don't fuck with that. I'm gonna just play Treasure Hunter in every purple deck and never pay for a Rebuke. So
exactly. We find ways to abuse it. It feels like these designers just design things that feel cool and then didn't actually test it with a competitive mindset to make sure that any of this stuff is viable and is going to be played the way they intend it. Because
So
as of right now, equipment's just like, this is the first set that they're introducing it, and the mechanic's like functionally unplayable because they printed Rebuke.
So if you want to talk about cards that I actually thought were good gold producers and like balance, not incredible, but just like balanced gold makers, Chemtech Cask is a great example. It's a field spell that will make you, if you're playing a deck like this, you'll probably make a gold close to every single turn. But most decks like this don't even play it because you have Wages of Pain and Blood Money, and these are just better ways to make the gold anyway, so you're just like, oh fuck it, I don't need Chemtech Cask. This one does because it plays Jace, so it can crack it with Jace, so that one kind of makes sense. But like, in my mind, this is like kind of the power level of what I would expect to be making gold. And then like cards like Blood Money and Wages of Pain, you could have these, but these would be like the more powerful cards that made gold. Like this would be like a rare in my mind. What is it? Oh, this is a rare. Or no, that's an uncommon, right? Uncommon. This is a common. But these would be like rare, like more close to like a rare power level. Maybe Wages of Pain more than Blood Money. But like, just like this is like a better gold maker. And they kind of just, they made too many effects, so many effects that are just so much better that you don't end up even playing things like Chemtech Cask. So,
Yeah. Is there any chance of Master Yi staying at the top? I fear he might be cooked. Yes, he is cooked.
He's cooked.
Wait.
Sorry.
Wait. He's, that deck is the antithesis of fair mid-range, which is the most unplayable strategy in the entire game right now. So, watch the top 64 match if you want to see exactly why Yi is not very good right now.
Yeah, that's in the words of Jim Cramer, sell, 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 sell. That's a mid-range deck. That's mid. Sell, 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 sell. Like, nope, no, Yi stocks are way the fuck down right now.
I think Riot is having a tough time with power cost balance in general. It makes sense. This is a new mechanic, but they treat it almost the same way as something like cycling a card. Yes. I think the actual issue with power costs right now is that they don't understand that there's a difference between Rebuke having a power cost and like a 3-drop 4-might unit that's like, oh, this is undercosted. Let's just slap a power on this. But even the 1 power on that 3-cost unit is more substantial than the 2 power on Rebuke. Because all that matters with power is how early you're forced to play this card in the game, right? So if it's something that you're forcing to play on turn 1 because you want to play your 3-drop or whatever, you can make that card insane. Make it like an Ezreal or whatever. Like that card does everything for 3 and a power because it costs you a power early on in the game, and now that's 1 energy for the rest of the game. If it's on a Rebuke, for example, then that power cost is negligible because I'm playing this card on the last turn in the game and it's winning me the game on the spot. Rebuke could say 10 powers sometimes and it wouldn't matter. That card would still just be insane. And as a matter of fact, into like the Ornn decks or the Aurelia decks, for example, that card does say it costs 10 power and it still wins you the game every single time you cast it. So, I think that's something that the Riot dev team needs to hopefully understand moving forward. That power cost is a cool mechanic, but they gotta understand it's not a 1-for-1 thing. It depends on what the card is that it's attached to.
So my guess is their internal testing ended up looking much different from what is actually happening. Maybe using tons of power costs at one. The players went the route to use as little as possible. And we've seen that before, not just with power costs, but like you can tell in their design that they thought players would be stacking battlefields far more than they actually do. And what ended up happening is players just said, nah, we'll just attack one at a time because that's the lowest risk way to play the game. Like, we'll only stack one guy in a battlefield unless we're like literally holding to win the game or playing against a deck that we know literally can't out this because there's no reason to take the risk and stack up. And that's extremely evident in cards like Master Yi, where they thought that having one guy in the battlefield was such a downside that they would give you this egregiously overstated upside because they're just like, nobody's leaving one guy in the battlefield out after turn 1. They're going to stack up, right? Nope.
Yeah.
That's just not how the game is played. There is stacking in some decks, like there are hold decks, but holding comes with so much inherent risk. you can just get blown out and lose your whole board when your opponent breaks you, that most players have just avoided doing it altogether unless you're like, say, an Aurora deck, your Yi deck. But even Yi, you're not getting blown out, you're just leaving one guy in there. So if they break your guy, you're just like, well, I just lost one thing. Aurora, you're stacking up with so many guys, you're just like, yeah, you're not breaking my 36 power, bro. Like, I don't care, like, unless you have an unchecked power or something in your hands, you're not winning this game. So
yeah.
Yeah. So I think
What's
that
we get the power creep 2 energy 4 power body. Sorry, I saw that was like, I don't know, at this rate set 3. Who knows?
set 3. Maybe a supplemental
yeah.
set between sets 2 and 3. There might be a
Yeah.
game card that they forgot to include. It's like a DLC card.
Yeah.
So
it probably draws you 3 cards and does other things too. But yeah, that's, I don't know. Well, as much as we talk, I'll say this every single time because we do still believe in this game and want this game to succeed. We just take the opposite approach because I don't believe that going on Twitter and just telling Riot that, oh yes, everything you all is doing is perfect and everything's fine and you should keep printing cards like Called Shot and not take into consideration how miserable it makes to play your game from a functional perspective and not just the balancing, or you should print Rebuke, a card that just invalidates every strategy that you want to make good, and you should let Draven run. You're doing perfect, right? Like, that's not going to improve our game and make it good. This game has good bones. You can still make this game good, but you can't keep doing it by, closing your eyes, putting your head in the sand, and just pretending that all of these core fundamental design issues that they made, yeah, exactly, as Alex is doing, like, that's not going to make our game good. It's just you're gonna open your eyes afterwards and realize that your player base is halved. You're gonna do it again, and then it's gonna have again, and then it's just gonna slowly die. It'll peter out with a whimper rather than going out with a bang.
yeah, yes.
Reaver's Row needs to go if they don't want to ban actual cards. Yes, that is my number 2 card that I would ban.
Yeah, we did talk
Number
about
1 is
Reaver's Row.
Rebuke. Number 2 is Reaver's Row. So
I don't think.
Yeah.
I don't know if they'll ban anything before Bologna. I think the current betting line, if there was a polymarket bet on this, I would wager that the current betting odds is that it's 80% in the favor, 90% 85%, we'll go in the middle, 85% in favor of no, 15% is yes. But I think those odds, in my opinion, could shift if we start seeing more top cuts like this. If it stays like this or gets worse, like if we get to a point where, like, what was it, 62% for this one? If we get to a point where we're seeing like the last regional is like 80% Draven top cut, yeah, maybe they'll be like, okay, maybe this is so bad that, like, I think it also depends too, like, what the temperature is online, right? If, like, people are literally, every Twitter post these guys have to read is, I couldn't get my pre-order on your website, I couldn't get into events, and Draven is ruining the game, chances are they're going to make some changes. They don't want to hear about that. Yeah. So, like, if every single person is just going on, if every video every Riot employee has to watch for the week is just, like, lights up the Ben Affleck cigarette, oh, it's another Draven is broken, please ban it, oh, they go to every good player's Twitter, and all they're doing is complaining about Twitter, like I said, they're going to be like, all right, guys, it's time to just bite the bullet, like, let's do something about it, like, let's not let it ruin 2 more events, or maybe these people are too prideful and they'll just say, nah, we're not wrong. You guys just, like, get good, like, innovate, get better. And then after Bologna and Vegas, if this trend continues, which it almost certainly will, if I had to bet, then they'll be like, we're sorry. Like, the South Part Oil executives, like, we're sorry. Like, it's, I think the odds are not in favor of a ban before Bologna as it stands right now, though, but my opinion could change based on results and based on how the community temperature alters over the next couple of weeks leading up to that. So,
let's see, a few questions. Any hope for Set? This is something I've covered before. I do think Set has the highest potential of the fair mid-range decks into the field as a whole because he does have good matchups into a lot of the field. But Rebuke is a problem. If you want to play Set, I think you still can. Your Draven matchup is probably more favored than most, but that is still a losing matchup rate compared to the vast majority of things. So I think Set is not a good pick right now if you want to try and win an event, but it's good into the Kaisas, it's good into, I think you can make it good into the Relias. You can build Set to kind of be good into pretty much everything but Draven. All that you can do into Draven is play 3 sabotages and hope that you snipe the rebukes out of their hand. That's really about all you can do. Holding is impossible and Watcher exists. Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Watcher was a problem card that has kind of built this metagame right now where the reason I like that Set deck so much and have continued to play it through Set 1 is it's the only one doing something unique by trying to play a hold strategy into a field of Watchers and Dariuses and Cleaves and all these broken offensive cards that should have never really been printed, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think that's mostly it. So I'm guessing Aurora Strat is cooked based on how easy move gear. It's kind of the same way that I just mentioned about Set, where if you want to play Aurora, there is a way to play Aurora, and that's to rip the rebukes out of your opponent's hand. I think MF Aurora is kind of playable.
It's not so much the gear removal, although that's part of the problem. Like, if Aurora ever got to the point where it was just, like, out of control, yes, you probably could hate it out now. There's enough gear removal to do that. Nobody's really playing that right now, though. It's more just an issue of, purple tempo is, like, the kind of the worst nightmare for Aurora. And it's not, unlike in the last meta, it doesn't feel like it's good enough to win without a turn 3 or 4 Aurora. Whereas last meta, it can kind of put up a fight against these decks, but against Draven, if you don't have Aurora churning out the Mind Splitters and ripping the rebukes from their hand, it's not good enough. The other problem, too, is now they have Fizz, so they can actually get the rebuke back and just cast it that way, so that's also something to consider.
Yeah, let's see. I've seen some discourse around banning. Many agree Treasure Hunter is bannable, but what about Traveling Merchant? Traveling Merchant's like up there, and it's like probably the most powerful 2-cost unit. It wasn't ever really that big of a problem in Set 1 because that was before Purple got so broken, and it's just become a very oppressive strategy because they have access to called shots and Ezreals now. So it's gotten much, much worse. And so I think Traveling Merchant is a very broken card, but it's clearly part of the strategy that they want Purple to be. So it's one of those cards where, like, if I was making like a 30 card ban list, which I realistically probably could for this game, it would be on there, but it's pretty far down the list of things that I want to get banned. And I'm a realist. I know that they're not going to just go out and ban 15 cards because the game sucks right now, or at least into Set 2, it is tough for you to play something not Draven. Hate Reaver's Row so much. Agreed. Fuck Reaver's Row. Get that shit out of here.
Brandon Weaver says 20 locals full of real motherfuckers better than 64 meta sheep was confirmed in the 90s. What the fuck does that mean? What the hell are you talking about? It was confirmed in the 90s? What does that mean? Like,
I think he's just saying, talking about our earlier conversation, which was our original topic conversation until we got on the rant from chat. I do agree. It's better, like, if you're playing into a field of like actual competitive grinders as opposed to people who don't know what they're doing and just copying that deck.
What does he mean by that was confirmed in the 90s, though? What, like the 1990s?
Yeah, I'm assuming Magic locals or something way back then, you know?
Okay, I agree with your statement. However, don't make me pull up these 95 fucking Magic Worlds decks. I'll tell you what those motherfuckers are playing. This is like Michael Jordan playing against plumbers and janitors. This is like Wilt Chamberlain dunking on every single 5'7" or 5'10" white guy because they literally don't have basic fundamentals, and he can just hold the ball with no shot clock and just dunk. Like, no. Do not ever cite 90s Magic to me, especially early 90s Magic. I will tear your ass apart if you ever cite the fundamentals and how good 90s Magic players were back in the 90s. Like, I will pull up these fucking deck lists on stream right now. Do not ever cite the 90s as an example.
That's a good point as to our thing where, like, their lists were so bad and they were bad players back then because they didn't have card games were new. And I think that's why we're seeing a similar thing out of China with all these lists where card games are kind of new over there. So they don't have the experienced players like we do over here who are battle hardened and have gone through the gauntlet to understand why all these random one-ofs are not particularly good right now, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's what it is to say. Let's see. It gets me so badly that we get one regional per set in NA. Like, why we have two regionals that are going to be going on for set two? Why I'm at the very least, if we don't see a ban list for Bologna and Vegas, we almost assuredly will see a ban list between those two and the second set of regionals. There's a set of regionals that's been scheduled for April. One in North America, one in EU again. So there'll be two of each for set two, and yeah, so those will be in April. We don't know when tickets are going live or anything like that, but we do know that set three is May 7th or something like that. So yeah, we will have another set two one. Hopefully, it'll just be a different set two format where they get rid of Draven, they get rid of Aurelia because that deck's going to be a problem as soon as they get rid of Draven, and then maybe we can have some fun and fair games of Riftbound at that point.
John Finkel would spank me. If I knew who John Finkel was, maybe, but I have no idea who that guy was. And I can promise you, if he played in 1995, he was not as good as he is now. That's for damn sure.
Yeah, I mean, Finkel is he's one of the legends that have stood the test of time to continually do well in Magic over the years. He still comes back and as a 50-year-old man or whatever and does well in Magic tournaments. So he's still a very good player, but his skill, from my understanding in most recent events, has been in like limited events, which is more to a testament to understand that he's just fundamentally a good player. He understands cards and games as a whole, not necessarily that he was a good Magic player at the time, you know. And some of the previous games that I was good at that had like these very, like Argent Saga is one that it's a game that nobody's ever heard of, but that's the point. I was very good at that game, but it was only in the context of everyone else who was not very good at that game. So like I didn't have that diehard competition that was dragging me up to get particularly good. So like if I were to play that game now, my list would be 100 times better and I would never have dropped a single game playing a game again. But at the time we didn't have the competition. Obviously Alex played that game too. So that's why he's giving me some grimaces right now. But objectively we sucked at that game because there wasn't any competition. So it was like
okay, for reference, I got to play 2 events in that game, and I won the second one.
Yeah, on my list.
Yeah,
on my list that I gave you.
I beat Collin in finals with his own deck. That was great.
Yes.
That was incredible. He makes this deck the night before in the airport, or 2 nights before, because we traveled together, because I lived in Florida at the time, and so did he. So I drove up to him. We flew from Orlando together. He makes this deck at the airport the night before. We're in a team house of like 10 people. No one can be convinced to play this deck. Next day, we're both in finals. We're the only 2 people in the entire tournament playing this deck. We both make finals. And this was at their like GP level events. Granted, it wasn't that big. It was like 150, 160 people or whatever. But like, still, it's fucking crazy how that happens.
Yes. I've always been a good deck builder, but that's been that's my thing. I'll always say like Alex has one thing on me, which is that if he grinds a deck infinite, then he can learn it very quickly. He's good at like mastering a deck. I'm good at identifying what is good in a format before I even like play a single game. I just can fundamentally like map out a game going into it.
I'm a terrible deck builder. Like, awful deck builder. Like I don't try to theory craft. I don't try to do anything. I'm very good at refining things though. So like when I see an idea, like I say this all the time. Some of the best decks I've ever played was just like I'm grinding against random like slows online, or I'm like pulling data from random events, like a random 30-man event, and I go, this deck is awful, but wait a second, hold up. These 3 cards here, this guy, he's on to something. And those are some of the best decks I've ever played. I can give so many examples. The deck Ryan Valentino won the launch event that was Evelyn Lodis's deck that she played in a random 20-person event, won with, and we're like, wait a second, is this is this genius? And then he played that and he won the whole launch event with that. Like, he just changed a few cards, won the whole launch event with that. Like, and I have a ton of stories like that of just like, I played this random guy online and his deck is like terrible, but like, wait, this like 10 card core is broken. He figured it out. I'm just going to cut out all the chaff, trim the fat, and make this an actual deck and like reverse engineer it to be better.
Yeah. Are there any Legend such deck builds that benefit from second? The closest one is like Lucian out of set 2, because playing a Lucian, the 3-drop Lucian on turn 1 is like the most broken thing he can probably do. He's like just the best 3-drop in the game right now. But I wouldn't really necessarily say he benefits it from it, and that's why we're one of the people that are always harping on, right, to do something about the first, go second disparity, because there's like no downside to going first, because even if you go first and you miss a turn 1 play, which is what everyone says is like the worst thing that can happen to you, it's the same thing as going second with an obelisk in play, except you're also up a card. So going first is just kind of broken right now. So eventually, I know for a fact they'll fix it. So that one I'm not.
I don't know if we answered this one, but J Rod on Twitch asked, "Do you guys have an issue with how they are doing tiebreakers? The win-loss tiebreaker feels kind of bad." No. And I have a rant about this, so get ready.
Great.
So I think the way they're doing it is better in the sense that you control your own destiny. The idea that you can 2-0 is you are in control of your own destiny. That's great. That feels better than opponent's match win percentage. Except, here's what we saw a lot of at the Houston Regionals, and I still see it a lot of the times going forward, is that the moment you enter X2 and you're on the bubble, every single opponent you play against, you will just try, players were just going, or a lot of players, not all of them, but a lot of players were just going, hey, you want to just play for the 2-0 here because we now both need perfect breakers to like pretty much make top. And obviously the opponent can report them. Most people don't report these things. And then there was even a further workaround where players were just saying, hey, if you win this match, you can just have a 2-0. They're not asking, they're just saying, yeah, you can have the 2-0. I'll just say I scoop it to you. And then the other person sometimes will just be like, well, that's very nice of you. I'll do the same. Since we're both dead anyways if we lose, there's no reason we should both get fucked. And then where the bigger problem comes in is if you enter the X2 bracket sooner, it's actually more beneficial when you're executing the strategy, because what happens is, let's say I am 4-2 now, and all my games were 2-1s. I lost 1-2, I lost 2-1. Well, that was 6 rounds of me where I didn't get to do 2-0s. But let's say, so I'm locked now, and my breaker can only get so high. But let's say I start 0-2, and it doesn't matter what my first 2 matches could have been. I just got 2-0'd. But now, if I meet my next 7 opponents, all agree to this, and I do win out, I have now 2-0'd 7 rounds in a row versus the guy who entered the X2 bracket in round 6, where he might have gone 2-1 every round, and now he only gets 3 rounds to recover with 2-0. So it's creates this issue of people are going to collude to do this, whether it's against the rules or not. It's a very hard thing to catch. This is not like cheating because both players are participating in this action. And it's a very gray area line too, where it's like, well, you're telling me I can't give my opponent a 2-0. Why? It's the same as me scooping. I can just say I 2-0'd. Like, judges don't have an issue when like this happens all the time. It happened to me at a local 1K where one guy was dead, one guy was live for top. The guy who was dead beats the guy who's live for top. And the guy who was now got knocked out said, hey man, you're already dead, will you just give me the win? And the guy said, yeah, sure, I don't want to eliminate you. And he gave him the win. Well, it's no different than that. Like, just, hey man, can I just put this as a 2-0? Yeah, sure, I scooped 2-0. So like, you're in a gray area rules-wise. Even if you do fix this, so the rules explicitly calls this out, people will still participate in this because you've made a system that can be manipulated. And manipulated very easy with little ways to mitigate it. Like, you can hope that a judge is watching when they try to execute this, but if it just becomes a culture in the game where half of the players are trying to execute the strategy, you're not going to be able to monitor it. You're not going to be able to kind of stop this from happening. And this is where my issue with the game win percentage comes in is the fact that it can be manipulated so easily, and I think that's part of my first issue. My second issue, which is a smaller one, is it doesn't necessarily well represent the strength of the opponents you play. Because again, you could RNG into 5 bozos for the first 5 rounds or whatever, and you 2-0'd them all because you just played easy opponents. And so it doesn't feel like that's necessarily an indicator of your strength of schedule. Or you could you could start X2, but then you just submarine up from the X2 bracket. We know in opponent's match win percentage, starting 0-2 means you're pretty much dead for top cut. But in this, it actually means because now you're in the bozo bracket, you could actually theoretically just like your next, let's say 6 rounds or 5 rounds are just like kind of free 2-0s because you're playing against all people who are X2 or whatever. So I think opponents' match win percentage is like, as much as I like the idea that your destiny is in your own hands with the game win percentage, I think opponents' match win percentage is a way that you can't really manipulate, not easily at least. And it is a true test of your strength of schedule. It is the truest test. I would like them to go back to opponents' match win percentage, knowing all of these things. In a perfect world, I would like the game wins, but I don't think it's viable. Collin, end rant. You can.
Alex has a way to ramble on about these things, but I agree. I think there was an idea for why they did it, and as people who didn't know like the technicality side of card games, I understand why they did it. So I'm definitely not mad that it exists. But from a practical perspective, if you just talk through somebody going through a tournament and say it's 9 rounds, and you have the guy that went 7-0 and then he lost the 2 rounds, well, that guy's bracket was much harder than the person who went 0-2 and then he won the next 7 rounds. Which of those people should make top cut? Realistically, it's the guy who went 7-0 and then lost the 2 rounds, right? Because he had a much more difficult schedule than the guy who played an 0-2, a 1-2, a 2-2, a 3-2, a 4-2, etc. That guy played a 1-0, a 2-0, a 3-0, a 4-0, a 5-0, a 6-0, a 7-0. So from that perspective, because his tournament schedule was so much harder, he should be rewarded for that. So that's the specifics for OMW. The one thing that I don't like about it is that if you start 0-2, then you're just dead. But I mean, those are just the breaks.
Get fucked. Like, don't lose the first 2. Like,
exactly. But everyone kind of knows that.
So this is what I was told too. The reason they wanted to do OMW, and this is not, I'm not citing my sources on this, but I was told that they wanted to do something different than Magic, which I will say, Magic is not the end-all be-all of rules. However, if a company has probably been doing something for like 30 years, there's probably a good reason they're doing it, especially something like this. And I would just copy and paste what they do. Like, most CRs for any game that has a mana resource just rips off Magic's rules and then rewrites the parts that apply to their game. So, like, look, if, like, tournament policy, everything, these guys have seen it all. It's not that there are some things that you can't see and go, oh, this could be fixed. But if you're just doing things to try to be different, don't do that. Have a good reason. Like, understand why you are doing these things, because Magic is not complete idiots. They've been around for 30 years. They've seen it all. They're not morons. Like, they are morons, but they're not complete morons. Like, they know what they're doing. I trust them. Like, especially when it comes to floor rules. So, tournament.
I have a few questions I need to power through before I get to Saturn's question, because that'll take me a second. So in truth, the Ezreal deck hype, it looks fine. I think it's one of those decks that, like, if you're looking to play like a B or C tier deck that has some game into some of the top tier decks, it looked fine. We did a VOD review for one of our members who like ended up losing into the Miracle Draven deck, but made mistakes that could have won both of the games. That were like, they were very obscure lines, but it's one of those decks that like his opponent didn't have to do anything special in order to win the games, whereas he had to play exactly perfect every single game and not make a single mistake any single turn in order for him to have a chance at beating his opponent. So whenever we post like these tier lists that are like, and put these leaders in B and C tier and stuff like that, it's not because they're necessarily completely unplayable. It's more so that if you want to play this deck, you can, but you're going to have to work 100 times harder than everyone else playing like an S or an A tier deck. Let's see. Lucian. Yeah, Lucian's the best turn 1 3-drop play. I don't know if I specified turn 1, but obviously Ezreal is like one of the best 3-drops in the game. But if you play it on turn 1, you're spending a power, which is
Yeah, it's not ideal. You
a
know
lot.
what?
Is not
Spend
ideal,
power.
you know.
Someone asked if we're both from Florida. No, Colin lived in Tampa for a long time. I actually lived in just outside of Fort Lauderdale in Dania Beach for a year
Yeah.
from 2019, from May of 2019 till April of 2020, which is actually how we met. We met at a game store in Cocoa Beach playing Argent Saga. When I lived there. So
I can show the legend tier list. We have a video on our channel if you go to our YouTube that you can just skip to the end and it'll have our tier list for you. But that hasn't really changed. I'd probably put Victor a little bit lower than we had on that. I still think Draven and Kaiser are S tier. And well, Draven is probably SS tier. Kaiser is probably down there in A tier with like Aurelia. So things have shifted a little bit. We'll probably do a redo once we go into launch to see how things have changed. But yeah. What's up, Tug? Rioter, this is something that's new, and again, say it a million times, like a broken fucking record, but like we say all this with love. We want this game to do well, and that's why we're so hard on it. Are we expecting a bunch of Ruin Runner decks to pop up? That card's unplayable. Do not play it. Do not fall for the trap.
See,
if you want a reason why, go into top 64, watch the top 64, the most recent event, and look at the Master Yi player who had a Ruin Runner with 2 not so fast in your hand. The card's just like, it's not synergistic. It just gets ran over in combat. And fundamentally, it's not a good card. Do not play Ruin Runner outside of one very niche scenario, and that one's so niche I'm not even going to talk about it.
Every single person, not every single person, but a lot of people, when we said Ruin Runner was overrated a month ago on our Twitter, they called us dumb, they called us stupid, and they hated Jesus because he told them the truth. Ruin Runner is just not it. At least not right now. Maybe in the future he becomes good, but right now that guy is straight camel dung. Like, he is not it. So
and this goes into my long-winded rant I'm gonna have because Saturn asked it a little while ago, and hopefully they're still here.
I knew you were gonna read that, and this was gonna be like a 20-minute. Go off, please.
It's not like a 20-minute thing, but yeah, this is my turn. You've had like 3
No. I appreciate this. I'm running out of breath anyway, so I need you to do this so I can get some water.
So because it's further up for everybody, they asked, did you get good at deck building just by sheer practice, or how did I refine the skill as an aspiring deck builder? So the way that I identify and build decks in this game is I take it at a very looking far out sort of approach to a game. I think of it as like solving a problem, like a logic puzzle almost, whenever I'm deck building or deciding what decks are good. And this is also how I evaluate cards, which is how I saw that Ruin Runner card, and day one I said this card is dog shit, and people are going to think it's God's given truth or whatever, because I understand on a fundamental level this card does not work in the game of Riftbound. It costs 6 energy, which means you're not playing until turn 3. It's 5 might. So you're going to have to commit additional cards to it. And even in this hypothetical situation where you have it in your opening hand and it's doing all of this, let's say it even has like the invincible text or whatever, then all of this energy that you're committing to this card is going to only hold 1 battlefield. Your opponent is going to have scored like 4 or 5 more points than you are, and this thing is just going to lock out a single battlefield. You still have to find some other way to break into the other battlefield. So the fact that it's hexproof is irrelevant, because whatever spells that they have in their opening hand or the rebukes, they're like, oh man, I can't play it on this Ruin Runner. Oh well, I'm just going to hold the other battlefield. And then you're like, well, I only have 1 Ruin Runner. I guess I'll send everything else in there. And then it's like, oh great, these rebukes that were dead in my head the whole time, I guess I'll bounce that and I win no matter what your Ruin Runner is doing. So whenever I'm like evaluating cards or I'm figuring out what decks to play, what cards to play, I think of it on like a macro level of like, how does this actually play out even in the best case scenario? And then I go back to the worst case scenario, which again, going to Ruin Runner, and the worst case scenario, this card's dead in my hand because it costs 6 energy and I can't just tap out for a 5 might that does nothing, right? So the way that I built my set deck is like the one example that I can use in Riftbound, where it's like this is a deck that only I've played, only I've had success with, right? So it's the perfect example. Is I saw a problem, which was everyone is playing Kaisa. How do you beat Kaisa? What are and I'm like the things that are good against Kaisa. Well, that Zonia's Hourglass card is pretty good against Kaisa, and Seven Might is also really good against Kaisa. And I was like, is there anything that can do both of these? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, Set does this. I didn't build that Set deck because I'm a diehard League Set fan or I like those color combinations or anything like that. It was just I identified a problem, which was like Kaista being pretty close to unbeatable for most decks. And then from there, I was like, is there anything that answers this? And then I said, yes. Well, Set actually does quite well when you put in these arena bars, you put in these Set kingpins that get to the right might breakpoints, and so on and so forth. And so that's kind of my long-winded rant on how I build decks, how I identify games, and how I'm able to, like, in my mind, I immediately look at a card and identify if this card is broken, if it's terrible, so on and so forth. Is just thinking through the entire context of this card and all of its possible uses into a specific metagame, because the card is only as good as the cards that are surrounding it. You can print the most broken card, but if every other card, you can print Ancestral Recall in this game, but if you put it in a seventh color, and that color is the only one that you can play with itself or something like that, and every other card in there is unplayable, then congratulations, Ancestral Recall is unplayable because there's nothing that you're drawing into. It doesn't matter if you draw your entire deck if all your cards are dog shit. So it's, yeah, that's my, I guess, long-winded rant on it. I mean, I could talk for fucking hours and hours about it, but in a more condensed version, that's how I personally approach deck building, is more as like a problem-solving thing, rather than going into a set and being like, oh, I really like the look of Set, I'm going to make a Set deck. It's no, I see the problem in the meta. These are the decks that everyone's playing. How do I beat these decks? I'm like, oh, well, Set is able to sabotage the Auroras out of the hand. You can get to the Seven Mites into Kaisa. All your guys are Zanyas into Kaisa, so they have a hard time wiping your board, so on and so forth. Do y'all feel like y'all learned anything from this event? Any surprise at all? I have learned that people only care about results and don't look into the specifics of why a tournament is the way that it is, which is why we're having this stream, as everyone was like, oh, Fiora got second. That means it's good, right? Wait, what do you mean it didn't play any Dravens? Oh, and then it got 2-0'd by a Draven as soon as they sat across the table from it? Yikes, maybe this card isn't good.
I learned nothing. I knew this tournament, not that I want to act like I'm enlightened in some way, but this tournament pretty much told me what I already knew, which was that Draven is the best deck by a very sizable margin, and people are going to put the best deck over just straight middle card hunting. In fact, if there weren't middle cards, this probably would have been even worse than it was. Like, we're talking like, I'm thinking closer to like 80% of top 8 is Draven. But because there are metal cards, it does incentivize some people to like go a different direction a little bit. But like, even this was pretty heinous. Like, 35% representation of a deck is insane. If no matter what game you follow, 35% is a lot. Like, that's a lot. 62% in top cut in a 64-person top cut is especially heinous. That's what's that? 6 out of 8 in top 8, right? What's 6 out of 8? I don't do fractions well.
That would be 75%.
Sure,
so
close.
5 out of 8.
5 out of 8, sure. 5 out of 8 is 60. This is like if 5 out of 8 decks for Draven to put
But when it's top 64, it's like more egregious, because like I don't know what the exact standings were, but I feel like if we had gone down to it, whatever the top 8 out of Swiss were, it was probably like 7 Dravens, maybe even 8 Dravens. So yeah, if this is my first TCG, what's the best way to get good in terms of deck selection for locals? Netdeck, a S tier list. Yeah, I always recommend just starting with a list that has performed well. That's kind of been the actual, before we got into all the Q&A and stuff, what our specifics were talking about for this stream. So maybe go back and watch it from the start if you really want the full breakdown. But essentially, you want to start with a list that you know at least has the ability to perform decently well, that you like the look and strategy of, and then kind of refine it from there. If you really want to get good at TCGs, a lot of it is understanding why the cards are in the list. It's not like playing actual League of Legends proper, which is what a game that a lot of people are. If you lock in Draven in League of Legends, your Draven does the exact same thing as every other Draven that's out there. He has the same, 590 base HP, 73 attack, whatever the specifics number are, they don't matter. Whereas in this game, if you're locking in a Draven leader and someone else is locking in a Draven leader, your decks don't do the same thing because you're going to have a completely different configuration, similar to like rune pages or something like that, right? So getting good at these games is understanding why your deck is configured the way it is, because there's so many different micro decisions that affect everything and the way that you play. So yeah, that's all to say. Start with a deck list that you like the look of. If there are guides for them, obviously we post guides for all of our stuff on Metafly, so shameless plug there. I try to explain like my reasoning for everything that I put into all of our deck lists, so hopefully they're beneficial to people. And yeah, that's always the best way to do it. Or, we try to put out competitive content so that people can understand a lot of the plays. All of our live streams from the top cuts, you can skip to the games and we'll commentate over them to help explain why a play is good or why a play is bad, and so on and so forth.
Is there a specific reason I was seeing a lot of one of Gus and stack decks in Aurelia? Just easy, maybe useful sideboard out cards? No, there's not a good reason. There's no good reason. They shouldn't have those one-ofs. The one-of police were not on duty that day, but no, I don't think there's... The Gust especially. The Gust is like the craziest one because, and I said this on our stream yesterday, this is a card that fundamentally only works in like turn 2. Like the Gust's best use case is you go first or second, doesn't really matter. Second usually is like the slightly better one because you play 2, you leave 1 up, they move their turn 1 play in, and you Gust it. Or even going first though, you go first, they play their guy, you move in, you play another 2 or 3, you leave 1 up, you Gust their turn 2 play. This is a card that you have to see in the first 3 turns of the game, or it pretty much comes invalidated. So this card definitely doesn't make sense as a one-of. Absolutely one of the worst possible things you could play as a one-of. You should not be playing cards that only have value in the first 2 turns as a one-of. That is just awful. You should just have the max amount of them so you up the chance that you see them and actually get to use them in their window of opportunity, or just don't fucking play it. I think the stack deck is dumb as fuck too, but at least the stack deck does something at any point of the game, and it is finding more cards. So it kind of still don't agree with it, but at least that one's not insane. The Gust is nuts to me. That it might be the one of the single worst cards to play as a one of in this game.
Let's see. I'm going to Vegas trying to hunt a best of metal card. I'm trying to pick a deck. I would say give yourself a few options and then just kind of see what the play rate is for EU. I think it will be different between EU and NA, but honestly, if you just like the look of a certain legend, pick one that's on the less popular side and really lock in. Make sure your list is as fine-tuned as possible to do well with it. And if you're going for a metal card, then all you have to do is be better than everyone else at that specific leader, right? So yeah, I think that's the play for that, is just pick 1 or 2 of them that you like the look of, get really good with them, get a good list, and go from there. It's the conversion rate issue when they cut straight to top 64. No, it's only an issue because there have been TCG formats where a deck is so prevalent that it's 87% of top 8 or 100% of top 8. That's not really possible in this game, and why the top 8 stats don't look as bad as they actually are, because we had 40 Dravens make top cut, and I think there were only 4 of them that made top 8 or something like that. But that just ended up being a luck-based thing where the bracket broke down in such a way where the Fiora guy on that side of the bracket, there were literally just no Dravens on that side of the bracket for whatever reason. All of the Dravens just ended up being paired into each other of those top 40. Because it's always a 1 plays 64, 2 plays 63, et cetera, et cetera. And on one side of the bracket, just for whatever reason, the odd percentage, there were just all of the Dravens were on the same side of the bracket, and then the other bracket was the for fun decks, like all the Fioras and the Aurelias and stuff like that all got to play some fun and interesting games of Riftbound. So that's more what the issue in quotation marks is that the Draven problem is a lot more oppressive than this tournament looked, but it's just because of how the bracket ended up. Is regular Draven versus the Miracle Storm package definitively better / worse, or is it kind of a choice scenario? In my guide, I just told people to play whichever you prefer. Honestly, their matchup spread ends up being pretty similar. I think the regular Draven is a little bit better into the mirror match, but only because it's more consistent. Like you're going to be doing the same thing every game, whereas the Miracle deck, even though it does draw its entire deck, the turn that it does it on, like if you're able to have like a turn 3 to pop off versus a turn 4 pop off versus a turn 5 pop off, like is going to drastically change how that matchup specifically plays. So I think it's like 55-45 in standard Draven's favor maybe. But then, that deck is a little bit better into like random one-off decks. Like MF Aurora has a 0% chance into the Storm variation, where it's actually MF Aurora is actually pretty good into regular Draven. So, yeah.
I'm going to ask, do you think guys think seals get more important as the game progresses? I think they're only as important as the card design allows them to be, and what I mean by that is when you start printing extremely efficient energy costed cards, like cards like Rebuke, cards like Called Shot, cards like Falling Star, when you print these extremely energy efficient broken cards where their only downside is power, the higher density of these cards we get over time, the more you will see these seals getting played, because now what people are going to do is they're going to find ways to cheat with these cards. And what I mean by that is just like, oh, well, energy's not a problem because these cards cost practically nothing for what they do. So how do I bypass the power? And that's where the seals come in. That's where the gold comes in. And once you've reached we've already reached a critical mass, and we're already in set 2. The Miracle deck is a perfect example of what happens when all these really broken, power-hungry cards reach a critical mass. So Rasa, Called Shot, Rebuke. I mean, Rebuke's not one of the key cards in that deck, but Rebukes, Ezreal's, all these cards that are supposed to. The drawback is like you could never play all these things together because they cost too much power, right? So like you wouldn't have enough energy to actually play the game efficiently. But now the bypass there is the seals, and the card advantage and detriment doesn't matter anymore because you just draw your whole deck. So I think, yes, the seals can really only get better as the card pool, if they keep printing in the same way that they printed set 2, where they made all these broken, power-hungry cards. Yes, the seals will just keep getting better and better and better. I think these cards at a baseline, when we rated them, I said this card was a 5 out of 10, because in set 1, they were. There wasn't a high enough density of energy or power-hungry cards, but as this density gets larger and larger and larger and larger, eventually I would bet you would see these seals in every single deck, because if they're just going to print cards that draw your whole deck, then fuck it. Yeah, play the seals. Why not? Like,
yeah, it's yeah, I can agree. And I mean, we're kind of seeing that right now, right? Purple Seal is the only one that's really seeing any level of play because none of the other colors are, well, A, they're not playable because they're not Draven. And yeah, red Seal as well. That's the other one that's seeing play.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I've seen some cases play it, but
yeah. I mean, I guess Ornn is going to play it, but that deck's not playable because that no game exists. So.
But those decks all do similar things. They're playing a high density of these powerful, power-hungry things.
Yeah.
Ornn even gets to play him for free, so Ornn's just going to spam him anyways. But like,
right,
Rek'Sai,
and he just wants Gears in play anyways. So yeah, that's really the main issue.
Rek'Sai is like the Miracle issue light, where it's just like it can draw a bunch of cards, but everything's so power hungry, and you're cycling through your deck so fast that you're just like, fuck it, I'll play the seals because my deck is so power hungry, and the card advantage is like kind of null when my leader draws 1, my sig spell draws 2, etc., etc. So
yeah, it just comes down to like how much card advantage exists, because that's realistically what those cards are. Is you're paying a card now for energy or power in the future, and it's also like something that only really matters the longer the game goes on, right? If you're if all you're doing is you're playing it and then you're playing a single card with a power, well, that didn't really do anything.
Yeah.
But if every turn you're tapping it to pay a power, then oh wow, this card just ended up being a mobilize every single turn pretty much, which is obviously incredible.
If you pay if you use a seal 5 times over the course of the game, that card is a 0 mana card that ramped you 4 lands. So it's the one you paid. Obviously, you had to go back, but this is effectively 0 mana. You ramped 4 lands. If you did double seal and you use those if you use those 10 times, 0 mana card ramped you 10 lands. Think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Like that's how you have to like visualize it in your head. Is holy shit, this card just ramped me infinite. So yeah it's crazy.
But that's all obviously to say that like it's just in the context of the deck, seeing it early, so on and so forth.
Yep.
It seems like the type of card that will, I'm sure, cycle out as we get rotations and stuff. I don't expect to see this sort of thing.
Out of curiosity, what do you think the devs were thinking when they were tested Draven and still decided he was okay? We know what they tested. They didn't test with combat rules this way. I don't care what they say. They did not test with combat like this. The game was very clearly intended to not work this way when they tested. And Collin, tell me if you think I'm wrong, but there's no fucking way they tested Draven with combat working like the way it does.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think the devs are... how do I put this nicely? They said or the thing that I'll always quote is they thought that Yi and Annie were the 2 worst legends in set 1. So
we had a guy join our Discord today, and his cover photo on Discord was that Dave Gaskins quote, that exact like screenshot of that quote. So I thought that was
guy's my fucking hero. That guy's my hero. I gotta shake that man's hand at some point. Get a copy of that for myself. Actually, I might just rip that because that's hilarious. Whoever designed this game did not realize that this game can be played differently than the way that they specifically intended it for, and they did not have somebody like myself or Alex that can look at a game and understand all of the different ways. They just played it in their little bubble of stacking battlefields with every unit they play and hoping for the best. So, to be honest, I've never understood why set players don't run seals. I mean, my set list, it's kind of a twofold thing. It's a really bad top deck late game, which set really can't afford because it doesn't draw cards. And also the deck just operates very well on low power and energy anyways. So it's built that way because of the inconsistency of seals. I don't like inconsistencies in my deck. That's already very inconsistent because you have to see buff plus unit plus spells in order to make your deck work. If you're also adding in seals to the equation, then your deck is just like, sure, when you see a turn 1 seal and it's the right color and it saves you like 4 or 5 power over the course of the game, it's crazy. And then when you draw it on turn 4, when you're just looking for any unit or any spell, you want to blow your brains out. So, yeah.
Saul, Cloud Strife, Saul. To answer your question, a lot of games do that, but this is a side rant. This won't be a long one because I don't want to get into it, but I think that's kind of the mistake they made in the first place, is that good players do not necessarily make good designers. Mark Rosewater, the goat of design, said players are great at identifying problems and terrible at prescribing solutions, and I still stand by that quote to this day. And not to say that good players can't be good designers, because they can. They need a system in place. They need more than just being good players. They need people around them who are checking them. Magic frequently hires people with no background in TCGs because they want an outside perspective. They want to see, what does a casual person think of this? Like, what does a person who's never played TCGs think of this? They need someone who has a fresh perspective, who's never touched card games. And so I think hiring top players is good, but you need to interview these people, you need to vet them, you need to train them to be in line with your own design philosophy, and then you need an outside support system to help these people, to keep these people in line, and not just have one former Magic pro, or I don't know who's calling the shots, but one guy kind of calling all the shots, designing a lot of the cards, being the end decision or the final say on a lot of design decisions. You need this system. You need a lot of people. And in that environment, I think that there is opportunity to hire top players, and I do encourage it, but there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just like Collin Kaiser is the best player, so we hire him because he's the number one player. We don't need to interview him; he's the best player. Why would we like need to vet him? We just all we need to do is make sure that he's not like a guy who's never going to show up to work, and he's fine. Come in, yeah, you're hired, Colin. Yeah. Like so, and vetting these people is next to impossible because your HR rep, like unless you work for a company that's had 30 years of experience like Magic or Nintendo, Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh, your HR lady, what the fuck does she know about like our HR guy? What the fuck does he know? What do they know about hiring a card game professional? Like they're gonna look for the regular HR stuff. Do you have a good resume? Do you not seem like an insane person? Are you going to show up to work every day? Sure. But like, who is vetting you to know that you actually know what you're talking about? Because I can go in there to a person who doesn't know anything about card games and I can say all the things I'm saying to you guys right now. And she might just be like, yeah, this guy seems to know what he's talking about. He answered our simple questions and he seems good to me. But then I get to Dave Gaskins and he's like, this guy doesn't know fucking anything. He is totally unhinged. Like, we're not hiring this guy. Like, I just watched him rant on YouTube for 3 hours about about chess clocks. So I'm not hiring this fucking nut job. Like, get him the fuck out of here. So yeah, I think it's very hard to vet, and I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I think they can be successful in that role. I just think there's a lot more than hiring a top player that goes into it.
Yeah, I kind of agree and disagree. I think a lot of it is you're just looking for things other than hiring. It needs to be more so than somebody who is just the top player. Like, for example, if you get somebody who, I don't know, I'll take Diwali as an example. Say Diwali continues to perform well and he only plays Annie. He plays his one deck, he plays Annie, he plays it very well, and he continues to perform well post Houston or whatever, right? That does not make a good hire in my mind because he only knows like one specific aspect of the game. But if you find somebody who's playing a different deck every single set, they're putting up top results. Clearly, there's somebody that's the type of person that like understands the game on a more fundamental level, which is realistically what you're looking for, right? You want somebody who understands this game. You want all of its ins and outs, not somebody who just has like one pet deck that they do super well with and win all those events. That will never be a good hire. But again, to your point, like there's no way that an HR person is going to be able to understand this. Right. They're just going to look at a resume. Like, I know that I would be very good at designing this game or helping them to do it. But how do I show that on a resume that looks different from Dave Gaskin, who played Magic professionally for 20 years? They'll be like, oh, this guy's played a bunch of butthole card games, and this guy's played Magic for 20 years. Obviously, that guy, his resume looks better.
Right. And I think, too, you said, in fact, Chinese community said they won't use top players to test because it may be unfair. That's different. When you get hired, I firmly believe this, when you get hired to do test or design work, you should not be able to play the game. Magic, I think, is a year. If you quit Magic, you can't play for a year from what you know or whatever. Don't quote me on the time. I think it's about a year. You can, if you're using a top player to consult with, I didn't like that I saw some, I won't name names, but I did see some of the players that they were consulting with on this game playing in the events. And maybe they waited a long enough period of time because the cards were public for so long that maybe that was fine. It wasn't a big deal. But if you are working for the company designing cards, you are not playing in events. If you are being consulted on, you should not be playing in events. That is something I felt strongly about for years and years and years. And I worked for the game that me and him both played called Argent Saga. That's why I only got to play in 2 events. Is I couldn't play for the first, I think it was 6 events they didn't let me play in until my knowledge was like expired. Like I couldn't capitalize on the forward knowledge I had. So I've worked for card games before. I feel very, very strongly that playtesters should not play the game. That is just how it works. Whether they're a top player, whether they're some random guy off the street, whether they're God Almighty Dave Gaskins himself, they should not be playing the game.
Yeah. And that's definitely a big thing too, and why it can also be hard to recruit top players because like if they make enough money just playing the game itself, like am I really gonna pack that in for a salary? Like and working a 40-hour job, if I can just like I can write my guides, I can do my coaching, I can do my streams, like that sounds way better. So it can be hard to get that top talent too, as well. And I know personally, like as much as I would love to help them out, I would only do it under very specific circumstances, and those circumstances would not be approved by HR. So I know that that's like a pipe dream, but I'm not going to go in and they get told by Dave Gaskin or whatever that I'm wrong about a card design when I'm like I've predicted every single card that would be broken from now until the end of time. I know exactly how this game works better than he does, the person who designed this game. Like, but again, I probably commit more time to it than those guys do, to be honest with you. So
Steb TCG, it happened with Dragon Ball Bastards where they used I know all about that. In fact, a couple of those people are decent friends of mine. The one guy, I won't name him, but the one guy who got caught is like a friend of mine. He's a good dude. I don't want to talk any further about the subject, but I am aware of what happened there, and there's a lot more to that story than just like Mark. There's a lot of things to that story, but I don't think the people involved were as villainous as they were made out to be. That's as someone who has a lot of insight on that situation, that's kind of where I'll leave that at. But I agree that what happened in that situation, those players should not have been able to play the game. I agree 100% that I don't think there was a reason that Bandai should have allowed those people to play, and I kind of stand by that. But that's not, again, like that's not, is that their fault? Bandai told them they could. For me personally, I wouldn't play because it's like kind of like it's kind of like an ethics thing for me, but I also wouldn't say anybody who played the game and the company said they could was a scumbag. Like, the company's letting them do that. I think it's like a very like gray area. I don't think I would be mad at Dave Gaskins if Riot told him he could play in the events, and he did. I'd be mad at Riot because they're the one who let him do it. They're the one that said, "Yeah, you're good, man. Go play." So I can't.
Although I would absolutely love to see that guy in an event go 06 after he's like, "Oh, I know what I'm talking about," and then just go 06.
That's the other reason.
That would make my fucking year. Holy shit.
Yes, that's the other reason too. I think there is sort of a misconception about like designers should be good at the games they're playing, or designers are good at the games they're playing, and a lot of times they're just not. Like, they're good designers, but they're not actually good players. Like, every team is a mix.
Testers. I think testers should be good at the game that they're playing, but designers, no. Like, I would be a dog shit designer. I'll be real. I'm not creative enough to come up with card designs. I'm not good at that shit. I'm not a very creative person, but I would be a very good tester, because that's what I do fucking professionally for our team. Is I just take the set that's there, I identify what the best thing is, and then the only difference is like now I'm stuck with Draven and knowing that this is a tier 0 deck, rather than me being able to be like, hey guys, this is a problem, don't print this. And then they could be like, oh, okay, Collin, that sounds nice. We won't do that. I'm just sad how Chinese release set too early. So many people not interested in playing set 1. Yeah, that's a common issue with games like this. Whenever they do the early release thing that I think Riot didn't really understand, is that it creates this kind of lull period where everyone sees the new cards and want to play with the new cards, but they can't for an extra month and a half. So I think they said by like 2027, maybe 2028, it'll be caught up, and it won't be a problem anymore. But that also means that they got sets planned to be released for the next couple of years. So yes, eventually that will not become a problem, but unfortunately it will be for at least a little bit. Problem is smaller game designer studio don't have money for hiring testers and designers. I mean, Riot's like $1 billion company, so
small indie company, right? Riot.
They are not a small indie company. The issue is that Riot did not understand what it meant to hire people that are not just good at games previously, but are also good designers. I'm sure a lot of the ex-Magic pros they hired were good players at one point, but they clearly were not good game designers. Didn't they mention by set 4? Oh, wow, I didn't even realize it was that soon that they're catching us up by set 4. So, yeah, it'll be sooner than I thought, which is nice. I think that will fix a lot of the issues that we're having, at least with local attendance right now. I've heard that locals have been on the downturn because, again, nobody wants to play a dead format. It's kind of the same philosophy why, like, games, in my opinion, only thrive at a local level if there are bigger events that they lead into. Even the people that don't have or are never going to show up to these bigger events want to have like that higher level of competitiveness that's going on, so they can feel like the game that they're playing matters and it means something. Because if there's somebody out there winning 100 grand for winning an event, then that gives some validity to what they're doing. Whereas if these cards are worthless without us setting arbitrary rules and prices to them. So if there's no reason for somebody to want to play in an event outside their locals, then nobody's
I
going to
won a
play the
skirmish
game,
that was 3 players. Actually, so did one of our Billionaire did too. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's
I'm not
funny
talking
as
about
hell.
Riot. Gotcha.
Have you guys read Riot and More Dogs? This is probably a you question because I don't play TFT. So,
What's the question?
have you guys read Riot More Dogs director on TFT article after he hit Challenger in TFT? Interesting article on why we shouldn't ask devs to be the very best at their game.
I've heard of it a little bit when I did play TFT, and I kind of understand it. But yeah, it's this kind of the same philosophy that I said, and I both agree and don't agree. Right, Mort Dog's case was that he was like kind of the head of everything, and I think he was in the position where he shouldn't be the very best because he's more like the direction of things and more so than like the actual direct balance. I think there should be like I don't know, Milk. I think he's like one of the best TFT players or whatever. There should be one of those guys that's on the balancing team because he knows what's the most broken at every single time. But that's very balancing and design are completely different things that I think people don't understand. They just lump them all into one bucket. Design is to make the game feel fun to play for all of the casuals, for the cards to look cool, all that sort of stuff. And then the balancing guy is to make sure that we don't have one deck that's 65% of top cut. So it's a very different thing in my personal opinion, and that's why as much as we meme on Dave or whatever for his Yi and Annie are the worst leaders, like it's not that big of a deal if he's on design, but if he's on balance, then yes, that is a big deal, obviously. Any mental tips for not tuning out or going on autopilot during games? Always find myself thinking super critically during earlier turns, but struggling to maintain that focus. The way that I always approach games is that you only need to think for like very specific portions. The way that I always plan out my turns is I start my turn and then I plan out all my actions for that turn and then I execute them. And then if something happens where an opponent plays a spell that I wasn't expecting or need to respond to, then I'll redo that mental stack. And then outside of that, yeah, I do tune out, but it's only because the previous me has already decided this is the action I'm taking. I'm going to play all this. I'm going to hold up my primal strength. I'm going to pass. And then I do that. And then until I get to the situation where I need to cast my primal strength, then I'm not thinking about anything. There's not a reason to. And then once it gets to that point where I can take an action again, it's like, okay, now the brain is thinking, do I want to cast primal strength here? Yes, do it. If no, then so on and so forth. And I think that avoids the mental overload. But one of the skills in card games is not just being able to play perfectly, but being able to play perfectly throughout the course of for some of these regionals, they're going to be 18, 20 rounds or something like that over the course of 2 days. Being able to consistently play over the course of that is like skill, and endurance is skill. So finding your own way to do that is important for sure.
Yeah, I'll answer that question. How do you not zone out? Well, I don't. It's just random. I just let the RNG of my brain take hold. And sometimes I am just playing on autopilot. But players like myself, I know that I like to play on autopilot. And through a lot of reps, I can oftentimes play a majority of the game on autopilot, which is nice because it saves what I like to call the RAM of my brain for the important decisions, kind of like Colin said, where you play on autopilot until you can't, and then you have to like put your thinking cap on. Well, my brain, for those of you who are also equally tiny brained, is very small, very round, very smooth. And I only have so much thinking to spare in a day. So I play most of the time on autopilot. And then when I have to use that little bit of RAM I have for those like important turns, I do it. But I'm very good at playing on autopilot. It's something I'm very like, just if you play enough, if you play infinite of a deck, like Colin was saying I like to do, you can play most of it on autopilot because you just see so many different situations. Now, I think Riftbound's a game that's a little harder because there's so many intricate numbers with the way that the combat works and how much math you have to do with different cards. So it's a little harder to play on autopilot because there's no autopilot for basic math. I can't do multiplication tables. I'm going to be real with you. If that's what I got to do to participate in these tournaments, I'm out. So that part where there's all this like intricate, simple math, that part you can't autopilot, and that sometimes makes this game harder to operate on autopilot.
Yeah,
But
that's what our legitimate business person here in our Twitch chat is saying. But yeah, it's all about getting the reps in, getting that mental muscle energy or muscle memory to like a situation where if you've seen it before, then you already know what to do. You know, your early turns should be pretty autopilot-ish. You know, it's almost like chess openings is the way that I'll equate it to. Is like there are only so many turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 sequences that you run into. And then as it expands out more in there, or you go from, 10 possibilities to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000. And those are where you really should be focusing your energy on, or into those later turns once there's situations you haven't encountered before. The set guide was great. Saw a lot of results with it. Is the set 2 on the roadmap for the guides? I'll be updating both that and Kaiser before set 2 comes out with the list that I recommend on playing. I will say that I think set is very good into everything but Draven. It's kind of got the Aurelia problem right now.
Many such cases.
Yes, it's. I think it's a little bit better than Aurelia, even for what it's worth, because I do think it does have game. Because you actually can win. Like if Draven doesn't draw their rebukes, like you're nice, you're going to win those games. Or if you're able to sabotage those rebukes, you're nice, you're going to win those games. And then they draw their rebuke off the top, and then you immediately lose the game. So. I'll put my recommendation for set into the guide before set 2 comes out for sure. But yeah, it's TBD.
On the endurance front, how are you guys snacking throughout longer events? Didn't realize how hard it was to squeeze in food in a full day tourneys without a buy. So for me, let me give you my day schedule. As a person who suffers from the most crippling anxiety, even when I don't even know I'm suffering from the crippling anxiety, every morning, regardless of what I ate the night before, at tournament day, at the start of round 1, I have to take a massive shit. So go take a massive shit at the end or beginning of round 1. Round 2 plays normal. Round 3, go to the bathroom, crank hog. Round 4, go to the snack cart, get a snack. Round 5, after I'm so dehydrated I can barely see straight, I take a sip of water. Round 6, complete blur. Round 7, usually I'll eat a little bit more food and drink a little bit more water. Round 8, if I make top cut, reward myself by cranking hog in the bathroom again. If I miss, cure my depression by cranking hog again. And then we go out for a big dinner, usually around 11 o'clock.
You forgot round 9, throw 2 games to Rishi. That one's
also come on, you're gonna do me like that. You're gonna do me like that. God damn.
Yeah.
Yes, but I didn't. So real talk, I actually didn't eat anything that day. So that I think that actually hurt me a lot. I did not really have much water, and I did not crank my hog. So that's why you got to do all these things.
This is included in the guides. There's no way I can remember it. Not really, but this VOD will be up for everyone to watch in later situations. So I would say just play it back. Take notes. Almost if it's something like you really want to get good at, just treat it like you're studying a little bit. Take our advice. For me, I kind of do the opposite, where I refuse to eat anything throughout an entire tournament. That's how I stay mentally focused. For whatever reason, it works for me. Every player has their own little like tendencies and stuff over the course of an event. So, and sometimes I'll get into like habits that I get, I'll go to the bathroom every single time. I won't crank my hog, as Alex put it, but I'll take a pee break or something like that in between every single round. I'll get into like a rhythm when I'm performing well, and then I'll just follow that rhythm throughout the entire tournament. And then outside of that, I don't eat food. I just stick with whatever weird superstition I get on the day, and that like keeps me mentally sharp and mentally sane.
I usually do eat a little bit though, or like on a real note. Like it's just random. It's just like whenever the fatigue's hitting me, I'll go and eat something. Usually I get one of the bullshit Con Center burgers or whatever the fuck it is. But like I'll eat
Oh, come on.
something
Hey, come say hi.
satiating. Especially, you have to understand this first Texas event. They told us to be there at 9 o'clock. That shit didn't get out till just after 11:30. So we were there. If you got there, if you woke up, like you woke up at, let's say, a reasonable time, you're 20 minutes or whatever staying away, or even if you're in the hotel connected, you woke up at 8 o'clock at the latest. You got up, you showered, hopefully, put on deodorant, hopefully, brush your teeth. My God, I fucking hope you did these things. Then you go to the hotel, or you go to the convention center, you get there at 9 o'clock. The event was supposed to start at 9:30. It didn't. It started at 10:30. So you're up from 8 o'clock all the way to 11:30. This is like from sun up to sundown. You're up. That's what, 15 and a half hours. You're up. Maybe you wake up earlier because you have a job, so your just body's waking up at 6 or 7 or whatever. Let's say you wake up at 6. You have been up now for 17 and a half hours, and you probably didn't eat dinner unless it was the con glizzy. So unless you ate a con glizzy, or you ate like a burger there, or you brought something along, you've not eaten anything. Now you get out. And guess what? Everywhere's fucking closed because it's midnight, so you have to Uber Eats some BOGOs from the questionable Mexican spot. That's the only place open at 1 a.m. when you finally get back to your hotel room. And guess what? You've got Top Cut tomorrow, so enjoy your 4 hours or 5 hours of sleep before you have to wake up and do it all again. So.
Yep. It's the endurance thing is real. Like there are some people who are just not built for tournaments because you got to be able to go through these events. But yeah, find your little thing, pack some snacks, treat it as like a long work day or whatever. Because realistically, that's what it is. Like you're there for a long ass time. You're grinding, and you got to find a way to make it work. Click that Rek'Sai guide. The Rek'Sai guide is still in progress, but
I'll flash
it will be coming.
I'll flash you guys again real quick. There you go.
Yeah, here.
There you go. Quick
You can
flash.
take
you can
go back into the VOD and
Yep,
take a screenshot.
that's the free section. Now that's the section I'm going to make free because you guys already got it. So there you go.
Yeah, miss top gates because you miss play last rounds. I mean, that is a very common thing I hear from a lot of people. And again, it's usually not even a thing. Like these are good players that I know have the capability to top cut. They just haven't found their rhythm to get through the endurance of a entire tournament. You know.
Yep. I think. What was the thoughts on this Ari deck on screen? Oh, I was just going through decks to kind of keep you guys' eyes occupied. We were gonna play games originally, but I just get too distracted. Like, Con will just beat me a million times because I can't multitask. I'll get too engrossed in the conversation, and I'll either focus more on the game and just say nonsense, or I'll focus more on the conversation and just play nonsense. So I just said, you know what? I'll just go through some decks as they come up. There's no story behind this Ari deck. I was just giving you something visually appealing. Next time I can do like the Windows 99 screensaver where it just bounces around on the screen all the time. But yeah, this was just kind of like something to rest your eyes upon.
Yeah. Any Sever believers? No.
Nope.
Next question.
Next question.
I think she had the worst conversion. I think she had the worst conversion ratio of this China event. She was the highest amount of participants to a deck that did not have a single one in top cut.
Yep.
So,
and again, this is empirical data. Maybe all the Sivers just played 9 Dravens in a row, but that is indicative of the deck because the format is Draven. So like, you're not beating Draven, guess what? Your deck sucks. So even if they all did get unlucky, it is still good data to say like, okay, well, these Sivir decks literally couldn't beat Dravens, or vice versa. Maybe they were all made to target Dravens and they all just played non-Dravens, and then you go, okay, well, the Sivir deck has game into Draven, but if it loses to everything else, it's still not a deck because Draven is still only 35% of the field, and you do have to think about the other 65%.
That's the one thing I'll go on to is hopefully we can start wrapping up here if there are any last questions since we've been going for a few hours now. Draven, a lot of the problem...
Collin, I never wrap it up.
Yeah. Okay, I always wrap it up. Wrap it up. It's not worth it. Kids will cost you like $1 million over 18 years. That shit ain't worth it. Like,
it'll be a hell of a lot more by the time 18 years from now. That was like an estimation from like 10 years ago. Like,
yeah, exactly. A condom is worth it costs you a lot less than that. But let's take. It's all to say. you can build a deck to beat Draven if you want, and then you'll lose to like everything else. So yeah, Draven's a problem. Just play Draven if you want to win. That's my personal recommendation.
Let's take 2 more questions here before we get out of here. Let's limit ourselves to 2. And I like the first one we see. Why do you think Kaiser fell off so much this event?
Is this a question for me? I
think I figured you had a strong opinion on this, so I'll let you.
For whatever reason, in China, Kai'Sa has not performed nearly as well over there as it does over here. I don't know if it's just the players over there don't particularly like Kai'Sa, or they don't play it the same way that we do. I still think Kai'Sa is one of the best decks into Draven, but she has a terrible Aurelia matchup, which Aurelia was still popular enough that like it could have knocked her out of contention. And the standard Kaisas aren't really where it's at. You kind of have to play a removal centric Kaisa in my mind in order to beat Draven, and then you're like 0% to beat an Aurelia, you're 0% to beat a Victor, 0% to beat like an MF Aurora. So that's really where her issues struggle or lie. Whereas you build like a more mid-rangey Kaisa, then you're probably like maybe at best 50-50 into Draven, but you're still always going to lose to Aurelia. You'll have some game into Victor, you'll have some game into MF Aurora, but if you're always losing to the second best deck and then you're 50-50 with the best deck, then that's not a good position to be in, right? So
this is a question from Twitch here. So are you both starting with Draven or still working on counters? I'm gonna be honest. I think I've just given up on the counters thing. Like, I let them fuck around with that. I'm honestly just working on my Rek'Sai guide now. I've been so busy the last like week. I haven't honestly done much testing. I was away last week, starting on Thursday, and this week I've been like just busy doing miscellaneous tasks, and honestly haven't got to play nearly as much as I would like to, trying to write this Rek'Sai guide. But I've abandoned all hope. I'm just going to just suck it up and just play Draven because I just think there's nothing to be done. But part of me, like, there's like this hopium part of me where I really mentally in the back of my head have committed to the idea that these China events are going to just get more and more egregious to the point that they will have to do something about Draven before the first event. Like that's the super hopium part in my brain, is that I'm just like, well, I don't actually need to learn Draven any more than I already do, because they're going to hit it, and then I will get to play my sweet, sweet Queen Rek'Sai. So yes.
Yeah, I think that mostly covers a lot of it. I think that we will know by February 6th from everything we've been told. It seems like they don't want to post like a ban list or something that will drastically change things 2 weeks, unless it's like 2 weeks out from the event. I think that's where we'd probably see it. So if we see something, it'll be like that February 7th weekend. I think will be the weekend where they'll do some sort of ban and restricted list or something like that, or some rules change or something like that. Last thing I see here. So yeah, look out for it from there. If you don't see it on that weekend, I would expect it to just kind of ride for both events. It's possible that they would do something on launch with the set on the 14th, but I'd find it extremely unlikely, just because like people would be pissed if people have to travel. I'm flying out on Wednesday, for example. So if they post something on that Friday before, that's like, oh, hey, by the way, 10 cards are banned. Good luck in the new format. Like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna play. I'll have to figure it out.
I think banning. I think the real issue is that banning cards before your set drops is real bad, especially for a new game. But what's even worse is having one guy dominate 4 events, more than 4 events, but 4 major events prior to its release in the West, and then saying this is okay, and letting it dominate 2 more events in the West, and then saying we're sorry.
Yeah, exactly. So let's see.
I don't know which is. I don't know. I think that's worse.
If you can answer this one more question, does Draven's situation make you worry for the future of the game? Not really. I just think it's whatever their response to this is what's going to really make or break for me. You know, every card game, especially new, that was rushed as much as this one, is going to have some issues. So we have to see what they do about it. If they let this ride all the way till set 3 and just be like, yeah, deal with Draven for it, then like, yeah, I'll probably worry for the health of the game. But so long as they do some bannings or something like that, will be good. And then the Victor question: why do I think Victor underconverted? I think that deck is very good in best of one, and then poor in
Yeah,
games
it
2 and
gets
3 when
side
your
against.
Draven opponent can like board in their hard bargains, board in assembly
Yeah.
rigs, board out their blood rushes, all the dead cards, that sort of stuff. So
I also think too
yeah,
is I also think with the Victor thing too is like that deck oftentimes a lot of games come down to do you see the combo being Imperial Decree and Bellows Breath, and I think a lot of the time when it doesn't see like in the dire situations when it doesn't have that combo, it just folds. I think when it sees that combo, it's favored. I think when it sees multiple of that combo, it just wins. But like, I think there's still more to be seen from this Victor deck, but it also has some auto losses. Like, man, you'll never beat a Rek'Sai. Give me all the Victors. I will smoke that deck endlessly. Like that deck will never beat me playing Rek'Sai. And there's a couple other bullshit decks that'll do that too. Like not great one decks, but like decks that'll just kind of like yeah, they'll just kind of pound you. Like you play an Ornn and you don't like have a double pull for their flip. Yeah, you'll probably lose. Like some cases are same thing with Aurelia. Like sometimes they'll just like Cole is going to be your best friends against the best friend against those protect the king strategies, and sometimes you just won't have them and you'll lose. Like or you won't have the you won't draw Imperial Decree. That's the other best friend versus those types of decks, or they'll have the counter spell. So like there are some like places where this deck loses points into the chaff decks, and you just like it just explodes. And I played a lot of the Victor deck. It's one of my favorite decks. It's the next deck that I think I'll rate a guide for after Rek'Sai. Um, However, I am dubious of its consistency in its current form, and I like some of the iterations. I like the garbage grabber to up some consistency. I am not a believer in the Jace build, and I think that also kind of stifled its conversion. Is that I don't think the Jace build is good, and I think a lot of these Victor versions were the more Jace versions, and I think the more hard control versions are better in my opinion. But
yeah,
that's just my opinion, of course.
sure.
Um,
I think that
so
about sums it all up. So
all right, well.
um,
That'll be it. For those of you who are wondering, a quick little bit of advertisements. One, the Draven Guide is now up. Please come check out our Draven Guide that Collin has spent the last month working on. It covers both Miracle Draven and the standard Draven. It is close to what 23,000 words or something, in
it's
24,000
like yeah,
words. It's
24,000
massive.
words. Yeah,
Videos, VODs, just tons and tons of information that you need in there. Highly recommend it too. Friday, Saturday, we are going to be doing the next Chinese regional. I will be joined Friday night by Collin. Saturday, I'm looking for a guest. Friday, I don't think we're going to go the full 12 hours, but Saturday, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be up and just trying to crank my way through, not crank meaning make it through, not crank my hog through. Crank my way through
yeah, I'm not
uh,
doing that on stream.
the 12-hour regional, maybe off screen, but maybe just to help me keep my focus there. But yes, I'm going to be suffering immensely as I'm on East Coast time. So from 9 p.m. till 9 a.m. in the morning as I try to make it all the way through Top Cut. So come join us.
Yes,
Come join us this weekend for our 24-hour, 12-hour marathon stream. So thank you again, guys, and we will see you on